How's it going, everyone? We have another guest with us today. Our guest is Ambient Esoterica. How have you been?
Doing great, my man. Thanks for having me back.
Of course. So one thing that I wanted to mention was we had been talking about your background here. It's very, very interesting. So could you tell us a little bit about where that came from?
Oh, the background, the video of the
The
background.
video, yes.
Yeah, it was my house is pretty not impressive, So I was like, I have a green screen that I never use, and it's a screen grab from a video I did about Liberesh, music video that is. For those joining, I do music video, not talking heads video, and I have a cat.
Yeah. So yeah, you basically, from what I understand, is you take concepts and you translate them into an audio environment.
Yes.
Is that, but then you also add visual components that seem to correspond to the frequencies as well, from what I can tell.
Yeah, so a majority of my approach is I've been a professional musician forever, like holding a bass on a stage, doing this kind of thing. And I just I wanted to try something super experimental where I let systems or like the rolls of a dice or the casting of runes decide what notes I would play. And I kind of
Mhm.
started with that, and that led to tarot cards and finding out the pitch of those. And then along the way of thinking, I stumbled upon this, wow, this is a never-ending idea. I discovered that, and maybe you've run into this too, where you head down this path of like, wow, this is a really unique thing I'm thinking of. And then you discover that, oh, Paul Foster Case and the Golden Dawn have already turned the paths or even the tunnels to set into pitches or keys and notes. And I was like, so then that's when I decided to make the channel. I'm like, I could endlessly, I'm never going to run out of ideas.
Oh no.
I had over 100 videos now of just conceptual, mostly occult leaning videos or numerology, mathematical. Um, it's fun because I you don't run out of ideas, and you're not necessarily responsible for the composing because you're letting something else do the composing for you. You just kind of you bring a vessel, right? And you pull some cards, or depending on the date, we have the winter solstice come up. So my most recent thing is a winter solstice based interpretation of where the planets are and what signs, and you just hear the notes that those make,
Mhm.
and I turn it into music. So it's kind of cool, you know?
Oh, it's very cool in my opinion, and that's one of the things that started our discussion in the first place was because I can't remember if I stumbled upon your YouTube channel or your Instagram first. I think it was your YouTube channel. And I was like, what is this?
I think you mentioned you might have saw one I was doing either with uh, dominoes or D&D dice. Like I use D&D dice for divination because
That sounds right.
it it's um um it's just fascinating. Like as you know, there is so much to this occult world that it's just humbling to know that like you never reach this point of where you get your occult PhD and you know everything. Like
Thank goodness.
you just will never know everything. And it's so humbling to like you just go deeper and you deeper, and then you find another veil that you go through,
Oh yeah.
you go deeper, and that's what I appreciate about your channel is we briefly were speaking is like you're reminding me of concepts that I had just put like on the to check out later kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, oh my God, he's doing this Kenneth Grant book that I had on a list that I want to read someday. And you like dove into the deep end. And it
I
was like,
appreciate that.
and
Thank
the
you.
format, like I guess you're sitting right there and you're just,
Yeah, this is it.
it's, I was just, I think I may have messaged you and I was like, this is I talked about synchronicity of like, I was
Yeah.
just making a pathworking tones video for the Tree of Life not the Qliphoth version, but you know, the top and all the notes and how they would sound as chords and different combinations of spheres and them ringing together. And then I watch your video and you're doing the tunnels of Set, and you got to the section where you were talking about each path.
Mhm.
And you mentioned, sorry, cat going crazy. You were mentioning, oh, and this path is the note A, and this path is the note D sharp, and this path, and I was like, this is exactly what I'm currently doing, but on the upright tree, and you're on the downright tree.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, it's all related. But yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed about people that I've met through this channel. Lots of the people that I've done like interviews and discussions with, there's this constant air of synchronicity that
Yes.
seems to be just running through at all times. And it's almost overwhelming at certain points because it's like what am I supposed to do with all of this? How do I translate all of this?
Do you find that because because I kind of approach this occult world as like, there's the people who are like love learning about it, and
Hmm.
then there's people who are love practicing it, right?
Hmm.
But then there's that like almost middle way where you're both. You're just constantly like, you don't want to lean too far to the left and you don't want to lean too far to the right. I'm talking about the
Hmm.
sides of the tree. And this,
Hmm.
and I was trying to formulate that thought, and then I watch your channel, and here you are. You're doing this. This is probably the most important video this channel will ever make. And it's this middle pillar type of, and I was like,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
It's in it, the synchronicity is unreal. You know, it's cool.
yeah. It's humbling and empowering at the same time, and inspiring at the same time. Definitely.
Well, do you think that comes from something, or is it because I really pay attention to those synchronicity, like I call them winks. Some people call
Yeah.
them winks, like, you know, it's and but then sometimes they really line up in a way that is just fascinating, you know, and
Yeah, at the very least, I pay attention. Whenever I have a moment of deja vu, I don't know if it's my multiverse aspects colliding into one or fragmenting into infinity or what a deja vu incident is, but I know that I at least find them significant and I pay attention to them. And I
yes,
find I have the same approach with synchronicity and serendipity. When they I've noticed that when they happen, it seems to be like a signpost or like a flag of some sort, like you're going the right way, or yes, this thing that you've been thinking about, that's where you should take your next steps, perhaps.
that that signpost, yeah, exactly. Like, um, there was a time where I was in my book of shadows, or magical tap, you know, where I keep track of these things, where I was writing them down because I was thinking, hey, you know, if you put them all together, are they leading to something that you're only getting little blips, you know, like little pixels? And
Mm-hmm.
I think four or five into them, I actually bailed out of trying to
Decipher.
gener
Yeah.
decipher, because the more you look, the more you find, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, that's
And
one
then
thing about
then
this path is
it
yeah.
gets a little scary then, because, you know, it can get a little scary if you really start, oh my God, I'm seeing orange balls everywhere, or you know, that's the third blue car I've seen in a row, and most cars around here are either white or gray. What? And you start really, wow, is this
Yeah.
a Jupiter message? The car is blue. There's three of them. And, you know, is this the third It's a whole thing. Um,
Yeah, it can be easy to drown in, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of the different viewpoints of the Western tradition typically suggest to start with some sort of psychological examination and and essentially mind control exercises, learning how to control your own thoughts and learning how to ground. Because it can turn into a landslide or an avalanche
Yes.
really, really quickly if you're not careful.
Yes. And I feel I've gotten lucky, and just being aware of that is so
Mm,
helpful. Because I definitely have the kind of mind that will ruminate until I've ground every last bearing out of some idea. And it's good to remember, like, at least for me, I don't always have to be seeking. I'm trying to get better at this, but sometimes I just need to sit still,
right.
and quiet. But that's that left and right kind of
Sure.
thing. So there is, for lack of a better word, some truth to, you need to oscillate, you know,
Mhm.
and you're still going forward, but you're oscillating.
Yeah, I think of it like a spring. It's like you're coming back to the same place at a different octave, you know?
Yeah. Well, that isn't, I mean, the caduceus swan symbol is that you
Sure.
have the two
Yeah.
snakes, and
Uh-huh.
that, you know, it's it's a symbol we've seen since we were children,
Mhm.
but the older and more uh, attention we're paying to certain things, we're just like, some of these symbols are just perfect, you know, they're just
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you see it cross cultural and cross, I don't want to say eons, but thousands of years removed. Um, Cultures and people have decided upon the same type of symbols for the same things. It's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. I find that fascinating as well. It almost to me, it almost certainly points to like almost a direct connection between symbol and meaning. It's like maybe somebody a long time ago had such an experience um, that that a symbol appeared to them in their mind's eye because that is the greatest way to approximate that experience symbolically. Or it may
Yes.
be that somebody created a symbol and then spent so much time with it that it created an experience. It could be both, but there seems to be some. I was speaking with someone one time who said that the whole purpose of all of this is we are in a symbol programming machine that
Interesting.
that we're meant to come here and interpret meanings and symbols and to give meanings to symbols and things. And
Man,
I don't know how true that is, but it definitely resonates with some experiences that I've had. I
I'm
don't
gonna
know how
have
you
to
feel
sit with
about
that one. Sit with that one, not now, because
that.
the way
Sure.
I work it, I'll get quiet for a while.
Yeah, go into the
But
tank.
it's I've been my pleasure thing right now is I've been watching a ton of Ancient Aliens episodes. I forgot about the show, and it was on one day, and I was like, this show's still on? I'm like 10 seasons behind. So I'm just
Man.
um but they get into, there's always this where we put here to mine these elements, or we put here to or did someone else give us like a roadmap or a journey or an architectural design to emulate? And it's this
Mm,
I never like to believe in something, but I think it's interesting that you mentioned like a universal symbol interpretation is like, there's also a universal design to architecture that we make as
yeah,
humans.
yeah.
And so there's, I don't know what it is,
Well, like,
but
sorry to
it
interrupt.
exists.
It does, and sorry to interrupt, but like you're getting at something very powerful, and that's like within our architecture, there is a most efficient form,
Yes.
and that relates to truth. I think, like you can make a building that is barely standing up, and that building would barely represent security, stability, what a home represents. But
Hmm.
then you could build a home that could withstand the elements, house lots of people, and that structure would be a more true symbol of home than some dilapidated shack.
Yeah.
So perhaps that means that there are some symbols that are more true than others. I don't know.
It's yeah, it's that word true again,
Yeah, right.
it's like we don't, I'm, you know, I'm sure there are other words that maybe we could, it's
Resonant, maybe.
obj objectively, understood, or they kind of like agreed upon principles type of thing, but it's the Masons had a thing about um, there's wisdom at the top of this pyramid, right? But
Mm,
the pillars on the side is strength and beauty. And that's
hmm.
this architectural design you're talking about is you can't just have a very strong building,
Yeah.
because it'll just be a strong building. But if you
Mhm.
have a building built with better angles,
Like a
um,
cathedral, for instance.
a cathedral where it's
Yeah.
has some symmetry and something that hits our eyes, then that's that wisdom and the beauty,
Yes.
and it all
Yes.
kind of it's a triplicity. And so,
Yes.
there's a hammer and a nail, but then there's those cathedral stained glass. There's
Yes.
where the sun hits the window, and then for people like you and I, we'll see there's a circle with 12 sections, and we'll immediately go to, okay, zodiacal, seasons, wheel of life. Um, it's just never ending, man. You could just stare at a
Yeah.
cathedral forever because it's
Yeah.
made with wisdom and beauty and strength, not just a very strong
Or
building to throw
yeah.
seeds in, and they'll never.
Yeah. And well, speaking of beauty, I'd like to get back to your work a little bit. So I could see how I might represent 8 notes with like an 8-sided dice or something. And I
Mhm.
could see how rolling an 8-sided dice and collecting the information, plotting that into notes. That seems simple enough for me. Um, I don't see how one would translate something like Liber Resh into a song or a work of art without giving away too much of your process. Could you tell us a little bit about how one translates something like a poem or um, something like a text into did it have to do with translating letters to numbers, or was it more than that?
I'm actually looking to the left because I want to. This is the thing. I create these pieces of music and the video, which is usually a simultaneous process. Like I'm thinking ahead, like this is what this is going to look like. So I often I struggle with the description in a video to explain these crazy ideas because they're not easily said like ABC. Um,
Mhm.
but I'm looking at the Liberesh, and I was of no help to myself. I have other notes. But what I did is I wanted to experiment with this technique I have where um, God, it's really hard to explain. It is really
Mhm.
hard to explain. But I use my own voice and I read the Liberesh out loud. And then I ran it through this robot voice type of thing.
Uh-huh.
You can hear it in old funk music, or like Beastie Boys used it in
It's like a
Intergalactic.
vocoder, right, on a keyboard?
It's a vocoder, yeah.
Okay.
And so um, there's the usual happy robot sound. So I pitched it way down, and
Mm.
so it it sounds a little demonic for
Booming, yeah.
normal description. It's but it's vibrating really fast because that's the vocoder.
Okay.
But then I ran it through an auto tuner because I didn't want it to sound like a human talking. I wanted it to sound otherworldly because humans, we have this very
Sure.
um, fluid way we speak, right?
Mhm.
But a keyboard is it's very a lot of steps and blocks. And
Mhm.
so I divided the octave, I want to say, into 72 pieces. The octave normally is 12 pieces. And I ran it through a 72 piece octave auto tuner.
So you
Um,
basically processed all of the legato, all of the smoothness out of it to create
yes,
more perfection.
yes.
Awesome.
And
Okay.
then because part of my brand, for lack of a better word, is if it was just the voice and that might have been interesting for some people.
Sure.
Or some people might have heard, the very beginning of that. They would scare the crap out of them. They'd be like, I ain't watching this satanic
I don't want
stuff,
to get possessed. Yeah.
right? And I mean, eh, there's beauty in that too. So it's covered in a
Uh-huh.
very and this is the background video of it that moves the whole time. It's covered in a very cloudy, almost noisy type of. I haven't listened to it in a while because I kind of make these things and I move on because I just have so many ideas.
Sure.
Um, but the intro to Hail Unto Thee doesn't start for maybe 30 seconds or a minute. So just, and then the idea was to not trick, but introduce the Liberesh without it coming across like you're in this very ritualistic space.
Hmm.
Um, but for me, that's like normal, and I understand a lot of
Sure.
people are not ready for that kind of thing. And the video itself did not do too good. I'm looking what I consider too good. And
I think it's
to,
going under a lot of people's radar. I don't think they understand what it is that they are experiencing and what it is that's being presented to them. Perhaps. I don't know.
I appreciate that. I definitely am happy with how things are going. I never want to measure. And I think you alluded to this too. Like your channel is not designed for you to figure out how to get the most views as whatever you want to call yourself.
Yeah.
And neither is mine because I know how to generate views. I
Mhm.
was a professional musician. The stuff I'm doing is way out there for the people like you and I who are reading Kenneth Grant's book and they go, Path 15 is A sharp? What the fuck? Right? And so people who Google that, and I do my best to have the keywords to where if people actually wanted to hear what is the sound
Sure.
of a winter solstice, let my videos pop up. And the few people that have done that, you can tell because they comment and they do say, there's nobody doing this. What
Yeah.
this is criminally underrated. I like um just sonifying basically these occult concepts of color and shape and magic
Hmm.
and turning them into a sound is really what I'm all about.
Well,
And I
and in
like
an
it.
image, I'm looking behind you, and part of that image appears to be a butterfly to me.
It's just
I,
that, and that it is it right there.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's part of the magic. Like that is not most of what I'm doing visually or it's not intentional, like you're saying.
sure.
I think the true background of where this comes from is I use this software called Cubase to record and mix my music and edit it. And it looks as if this was probably a screen grab of my Cubase session. And I probably hit play and I just recorded what my screen looks like and I ran it through a ton of filters.
Mm,
I could see that because I know what to look for.
right.
Um, but in doing that process of running it through these effects using Adobe products, you get a butterfly. Say, hey,
Yeah, and what a better symbol. Like we were talking about, like perhaps perfect symbols. I mean, a butterfly is maybe one of the most cultural representations of magic and transformation and life that we
well,
could come up with.
there's very few creatures that metamorphosize like
Yeah,
that, like
and to such a
extreme
degree. Yeah,
and a degree. Yeah. And not only, and like we're humans, we can't do stuff like that without like a doctor or going to a hospital and giving us tubes. And they're just like, no, I'll build my cocoon. It's good. I'll just
yeah.
park it right
They
here on this
completely
stick.
dissolve inside of it. It's fascinating.
But it's all like self-made.
Yeah, yeah, it
They're
is.
not, you don't see them with an IKEA booklet trying to be like, all
Right.
right, where do I? It's like
Or
they're born,
depending on other insects, they just do it.
they just do it.
Man,
And it's wild,
it is.
it's really wild.
I like your shirt too. It appears to be a paisley brontosaur
It's
or
some
something.
kind of dinosaur, yeah.
Yeah,
I would
that
go
is
with brontosaur, yeah.
very
Yeah, yeah.
fascinating. Yeah.
I
Awesome.
like the very colorful look. I tend to wear black in my normal life every day, just I'm known for wearing the same clothes all day, and then people see my channel and they're like, it's like two different people. Like, how is
Mm,
that your personality when like very quiet and reserved in my daily life and
yeah.
rarely want attention drawn to myself, you know? And I read a lot of weird books.
Mhm. Are you reading anything interesting right now, or are you between books?
I am, well, I'm always doing multiple books. I made a list for you because and this is just the last 8 books I've read. So
Okay.
I just finished Libernal and Psychonaut because
Right.
I needed to
Those are
write
great
that.
work.
I'm halfway through one about the life of Rasputin because that
Okay.
thing, he fascinates me. And then there's a few math books. I actually read books about numbers. It's called The Secret Lives of the Numbers, A Hidden
That's
History.
on my list. That's on my list.
Is it really?
It is. Yes.
And it's great because we're from the Western world, and so everything when we learn math, we're taught it's some white European guy discovered. And then this book goes through,
Like
nah, not
Arabic.
necessarily. Well,
Yeah.
it's not that they didn't discover it, it's people around the world have discovered the same thing.
Yeah.
But in the 1500s, people were not communicating with people in India like they do now or China.
Sure.
So Isaac Newton is like, I invented calculus.
But there was
But
someone else that was doing it. Yeah, at the same
yeah,
time.
but Isaac Newton could also not read Sanskrit to have known that nearly the identical concept was discovered, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so this book goes through all of that. You learn about, um, it's just so cool, man. It's just so cool. It's like we're living in a good time where the whole world is connected. So there's none of this personalizing a discovery anymore because it's really
Hmm.
it's almost um, like the magic squares are boiling through the surface. And then
Yes.
China's like, oh, I discovered this. And you have some European person, and then you have John Dee, and you have all these people, quote, discovering the
Hmm.
same thing.
Well, and this is really interesting because we're getting into like this is something that's been very uh, present in my life lately, which is like the idea of like scientists becoming sorcerers and sorcerers becoming scientists, because
Yes.
so many of the concepts overlap. When I first got into all of whatever this is, I approached it from a purely scholarly angle. I studied all of the formulas until essentially they begged me to dance with them. I heard the songs of the formulas and was compelled to dance with them. I realized I'm only going to understand so much of this until I make myself a part of it and make it a part of me. And then
Yes.
something happened at that point.
It I I think it's part of the human condition. We went to school, and we
Mm-hmm.
were exposed to math and algebra and whatnot. And then now me, decades later, I'm like going back to learn trigonometry and calculus and stuff that I already mastered, but
Mm-hmm.
approaching it from a more like philosophical angle of
Yeah,
um and I guess that's where Isaac Newton was coming from is
this seems
um
like it.
I think the book is called Isaac Newton, the Last Sorcerer. I think
Interesting.
that's the
Okay.
title. And it talks about his secret obsessions that he had to hide from the clergy back then.
Uh-huh.
So, not, I mean, we're taught about Isaac Newton and Apple and physics and this very smart astrophysicist type of person. But on the side, he was like doing some serious occult experiments.
Translating the emerald tablets.
Yes. And he was, you know, just that word discover shows up, but
Mhm.
he put a light through a prism and discovered these 7 colors. And like, this was him just exploring occult concepts and then he put them on a wheel and a color wheel that, invented this whole thing is like over and over again, discovering something that already exists, but
Yeah,
our
for the
minds can
life of me,
translate it.
yeah, for the life of me, I can't think of a single invention. It seems all to be discoveries, because we're just
Yes.
mimicking nature at the end of the day. Even our
Yes.
cogs and wheels, nature already has those in insect wings. It's fascinating.
It's fascinating. It's just, it's so fun to learn things that seem totally so far apart, like um the king scale of the Golden Dawn colors, right?
Mhm.
And you look at it and you're like, what? I don't, okay, I can memorize the colors on it, but then you learn the RYB, the red, yellow, blue color wheel, and you
Uh-huh.
learn that is the natural color wheel of a rainbow. And
Yes.
it's the same wheel that Isaac Newton stumbled upon when he split the white light into. And then for me, it's like that's when the information locks and it never leaves my brain. So now I
Hmm.
have everywhere I look, I have this circle of 12 colors. And
Yeah.
it's and then it applies to the music I make, the colors I
Yes.
choose for
It's
videos.
yeah. It becomes a filter essentially.
Yes. And um, it's
That's
so
awesome.
cool.
It
It's fun to
is.
stumble on this stuff. And then like I mentioned earlier on in this is like you stumble upon this thing and you're like, man, this is so cool. This and then you find out Paul Foster Case did a
Hmm.
whole thing where he assigned all the colors to zodiac signs and Hebrew letters and
Hmm.
elements and planets. And like, this guy already did all this, right? Like, he already did all this stuff that I didn't know existed. And so then I finally go to his Wikipedia page literally last year. And like it says, Paul Foster Case, musician and
Uh-huh.
occultist. He started out as a musician and he invented this system as a way to have a way to create more music. And so there's this stuff, it's just
Wow.
so like, it feels so cool to see like that other people have gone through these paths, and
Yeah.
other people are artists. I'm definitely coming at from a musician first who
Hmm.
is now using occult ideology and messages and meanings and divination to write my music.
Right.
Um, sure, I'm not the only one, but I'm really trying to strictly stay in that lane where my channel, YouTube channel, Ambient Esoterica, it says I have 101 videos. Maybe two of them are me actually improvising. Everything
Okay.
else is determined by a system of sort, a correspondence system, a
Some kind of
date,
formula. Hmm.
a distant planets are of between each other, or just
Yeah.
all kinds of.
What a cool idea.
So you can't run
I
out of
forgot about
ideas.
that one.
Yeah, you can't run out of ideas. There's just endless, the planets are always moving. So every day is a new piece of music. If I just wanted to do birth chart orchestras every single day,
Right.
I could, but yeah, we don't stay still.
Yeah. It's funny too because I was a musician before I was a magician. Well, technically, I guess I wasn't, but before I realized what I was doing was somewhat magical with music, I played the guitar from the time I was 13. I'm 33 now, so for like 20 years, I still don't know how to read music. I barely know a scale because everything that I do is based on the emotion that the notes and scales evoke.
Hmm.
And it's never been about like music theory for me. It's never been about resolving this note with this note or anything like that. It's been about what does this evoke when I play it or when I hear it. And because of that, I've fallen into or landed in this place of most of the music I create is in a minor key because
Ah,
the minor key seems to bring about deeper and
yes,
yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I do know because um, if you want to hear some spooky music or creepy music, the stuff that I make with these systems tends to come out very dark, creepy, and spooky. And it's just the way it is.
Mhm.
It seems to be the natural way it sounds, you know?
Well, it's a cult theme and information which is hidden. And I think people are often most terrified of the things that they don't know and don't understand. So it
Mhm.
kind of makes perfect sense that occult themed music would end up being somewhat um, unsettling to the populace.
Yeah. Have you, it's not necessarily music theory, but have you ever heard of the devil's interval?
Mm-mm.
It's
Oh, maybe. Didn't like Bach or somebody used it.
There, it's a legend, and it sounds like the legend's not really true, but it's two notes that sound really dark together. And that
Yeah.
famous Bach piece, da 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 da,
Uses that.
it
Okay.
uses this interval, which specifically is like an open E on your guitar and the sixth fret B flat. So
So it's
it's
dissonant naturally.
it's very dissonant. It's the
Mhm.
most dissonant two notes in our 12 note scale. So it's
Uh-huh.
basically like a C and an F sharp. So if you there's 12 notes in a
Sure.
chromatic scale. There's 12 astrological signs.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, I'm going to do this video on aspects in astrology. So you have signs that are completely 180 apart. They are the devil's interview.
Hmm.
And notes that are like what's called a square. So there's four of them. They're a perfect diminished seventh chord. And the notes that,
Wow.
and then the trine, I think it's called a trine.
The trine. Yeah.
It's an augmented chord, a perfect
And then
augmented chord.
okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So and the energies play out that way, similar to the way that the notes interact with each other as well.
Yes.
And they would, but
Those
it's like,
opposites are pulling, you know,
hmm
like if you have a
hmm
Saturn over here, it's pulling it. And so the wheel spins, you know, it's always an opposite, but there's every note has an opposite note, which is the exact opposite note would be the devil's interval. In
right,
color theory, that
right. I was
exact
gonna say,
opposite theory is the
yeah.
complementary color, the red
Mhm.
and the green. And then and you're like, wow, that's cool. And then you're like, ah, damn Golden Dawn again with their flashing colors.
Flashing
It's the
colors,
same
yeah,
thing. It's the exact same thing. And I was like, man, this is why I I say it in jest, but I'm really not going to run out of ideas for videos.
yeah.
There's just that alone, just color theory and notes and music.
hmm
And I have some color theory stuff where I take I it's a picture called The Birth of Venus. I don't want to mess up the last name. It's a famous standing on a shell and it's Venus. I
hmm
ran it all through Photoshop and I told it to give me, I think, the 12 most dominant colors.
I didn't know you could do that. Okay,
And then, so what I did is I
interesting.
took a color wheel and I put notes all the way around in a circle. And where the hue spots landed, those were the only notes I would use.
Very cool.
This is so like as many things as you can see,
hmm
everything you, in theory, everything you look at can be sound because every piece of color is a specific note.
Right.
It's wild. Yeah, it's wild. It's messed up.
I love art. It just in every form because it's all related, and one form of art will make me appreciate another. It's fascinating. It's all a web, you know.
Are you like, can you draw like and paint or anything? Because I can't save my life. I have to use
Not as well as
computers.
I used to. When I was a
Yeah,
kid, I was raised by my grandpa, and he was actually a pretty terrific ink artist. He could sketch and ink very
interesting.
well. And one thing that we would do is I would sit in the room, and this was when I was like 7 years old. I'd sit in the room with him, and he would draw something, and I would try to guess what it was before it was done, and then I would do the same thing. And this sort of taught me to look at things from a certain perspective. And I maintained that until after high school because I was in 2D and 3D art in high school, um, which was excellent for me. But then once I got out of high school, I quit drawing and I started focusing more on music. So I can still interpret things into an image, but I have to work at it. Um,
Hmm.
but I think that every one of us that is capable of mastering one art, this is what I always tell people. Like you don't learn how to play the guitar, you learn how to play yourself. And once you know how to play yourself, you can figure out how to play anything.
Interesting.
That's how
Yeah.
I think about it anyway.
Well, that's authenticity. You know, you're not wanting to be the next Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're wanting to make this guitar do what I can make this guitar do.
Yeah, I want to make it say with its strings what I can't with my mouth, you know.
Mhm. Appreciate that. I'm just me personally, I can't, my handwriting sucks. I just, it's this, it's all or nothing thing. In my head, I have all the music and all the concepts, but I can't draw a stick figure, you
I,
know,
I
or
think I
I've
think
never
it's
held a paintbrush and tried to paint a sun and a tree or anything. I just, so you just, so to me, I feel like I'm discovering this whole world of art and how colors mix and like
Mhm.
at, 50 plus years old of just finally like understanding, wow, these colors are all connected. Like I just never, my mind
That's
never,
beautiful.
just never thought of it. Just never.
Mhm.
It's,
Yeah, I
yeah.
guess I was sort of raised. I had a pretty good upbringing. My grandpa was he was highly intellectual, but he was very keen to inspire me to do things like go and adventure and draw and try to write music and things like that. So I'm very thankful for that. And I'm very thankful that we can, 50 years into life, view things from a different perspective. I think it's remarkable.
You said
So,
that word, you said that word inspire, or
yeah.
encourage. It's,
Hmm.
um, there's a quote somewhere on YouTube. You just put in Jordan Peterson encouragement, and
Hmm.
he starts crying when he says, "There's nothing more powerful you can give to another man than encouragement."
That's
And I was
probably
just like,
true.
it's powerful. And it's when I was a young boy, maybe didn't have the most encouragement in the world, but my friends would see me play guitar and be like, dude, like, you've only been playing 6 months, you
Mm.
know? So that stuff is that inspiration and encouragement that it sounds like your
Hmm.
grandpa was like, this is power.
Yeah.
Me teaching you how to change the oil in your truck, sure, right?
Yeah.
That's a skill, but there's power in this
Yes.
encouragement thing.
That's a good example. Yeah. And there really is. I mean, and what does it cost other than a few moments of your time, and some
That's
experience?
just very, and be sincere. Don't bullshit someone, but
Right, right.
encouragement.
Well, and
Because
that's the thing too. Authenticity um, is is a perfect complement to encouragement. I think you have to be able
yes.
to know what your own limits are, and you have to be willing to accept them, and you have to be willing to accept the other person's limitations too.
Mhm.
But I think once you can do that, I think a serious uh, thing can happen. Yeah.
I, I think now that I'm older and maybe a little more just tired of that consumer culture cranking out movies left and right, it's like
Yeah.
I can spot something that's inauthentic right away, and it's nearly invisible to me. Like I haven't
Mm-hmm.
watched a current movie in probably 10 years. I just don't care. I
Mm-hmm.
just I see behind that whole veil of what they're attempting to do, and it's earn money and become a product, right?
Right. And the
And that
result
is
of that
not,
is, yeah,
yeah, and
that it's not something interesting.
it doesn't interest me on that level. Whereas I'll binge watch Ancient Aliens. I rarely watch stuff, but I got sucked in, man. The only other thing
Well,
I watch is YouTube, and it's people
hmm,
like you and a whole host of other occult content type of people,
hmm,
creators, and from PhD level to amateur, like very young people discovering Satanism, and they're
hmm,
just like, oh my God, like a lot of people and myself included, that was one of the first doors you walk through.
right.
And then
Yeah.
there's door after door after door after door and tunnel after tunnel. And
Yeah. Ladder after ladder. Yeah.
yeah, so it's,
So you mentioned like Satanism is like a gateway like for a lot of people. Um, do you find that people tend to like in your experience, do people typically like take that first step too far? Like, or do they take it really slowly? Because in my area, when people would find that, like they weren't just like, oh, like I've been flipping through the Satanic Bible a little bit, it was like they would show up at school, like eyeliner, all black, like upside down cross jewelry, like they're a Satanist now.
Yeah.
Like, what was that kind of the experience in your region as well with all of that, or was it a little different?
Um, yeah, I think it's fair to give people like a little space. Like it's like even the goth community has that. They're called baby
Mhm.
bats. You know, they're
Okay.
and it's like you
I've
just
never heard
discovered
that.
Satanism, and so you're like Marilyn Manson, right?
Yeah,
Christians are stupid, and then okay, that's cool, but that's like your first degree, right?
that's
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
then you start reflecting on the philosophy in specifically the Satanic Bible I'll reference because
Mhm.
that's what I read, and some of us are like, God damn, this makes a lot of sense, you know. And
Yeah.
but at the time I was reading it, I did not know that all this sense that it was making was really pillaged from other people.
Right, exactly.
Midas Right and Nietzsche and Ayn Rand, and if that's how you say it. But I didn't know that till way later. And then that's when
Right.
I was able to kind of like um, graduate out of Satanism, but
Mhm.
um, still resonate with a lot of those satanic statements and the very, their version of the Ten Commandments. You know, it's pretty
Yeah,
rock solid. It's really hard to look at it and go, why would you want to treat someone?
that's nonsense. Yeah.
It's like it makes sense, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but
Well, yeah,
the
there's a lot of truth to a lot of it because like you said, it was pillaged from other traditions that,
yeah,
were tried and true and time tested.
I think I it's not a message everyone wants to hear, but I definitely recommend people read that book. It's very short. You're not going to go to hell because you read the Satanic Bible. It's this little thin
Right.
paperback. Um, but you might read it and go, "Oh, this is silly." But see, then now you're knowing it's silly. It's not really sacrificing cats and children.
Yeah.
It's there's a it's I think there's I don't know. I don't want to say it's a bummer, but when Anton LaVey, the founder, when he passed away, it kind of didn't really keep going. Like
Yeah.
it kind of, I don't know what happened. Something
It
I
wore
don't
off.
understand. Yeah.
Well, something like that is very sensational. And when there's no ringleader to call in the clowns and the lions anymore, the big top gets taken down. No, I truly believe that a lot, maybe not most, but a lot of Satanism's um, fervor and attractiveness was due to Anton LaVey. And I think as soon I think that, and I think also people didn't really understand it. I think the majority of Satanists didn't understand what they were being taught. So as soon as the person who like started it all and was giving things meaning was no longer there, I think people either started bickering back and forth and they fell out of it that way, or there was no more like, there was nobody saying, look over here anymore. I don't know.
It really, yeah. In hindsight, we can see it now because he died 20, maybe 30 years ago. I'm guessing. I may be wrong, but it was in my lifetime. You know, the church was founded in the 60s.
Mhm.
Um, but you really see like I don't know. I don't it's weird to say it's sad that it didn't blossom properly, and I know that if any members are listening, maybe they could correct us in the comments, but the legacy, I think there's still some people, there were some
Mhm.
factions that went this way and that way, and even his
And
own
that's
family members, and it kind of
yeah.
just yeah.
I think you highlighted the one of the major parts of it was that it fragmented. Like
Mhm.
I think the fact that because like now we don't just have Satanism. We have Luciferianism, we have Mephistophelianism, like we have like that whole thing I think sort of dissolved into
Yeah.
the seeds of other things maybe. I don't know.
It was this, well, if you look at it from a an industry. It was a successful model, like the
Mm.
way it was presented. It had the aesthetics going for it. It had some celebrity endorsements. It like
Yeah.
at a time when people were realizing they were allowed to have fun and not just go to a baseball game kind of way, but go
Hmm.
to this really dark room with some other people and, party and like have fun. Um,
Yeah, it's more personal than communal, perhaps.
yeah, and it's I don't want to come across as dogging the thing because I really have a lot of respect for
Yeah,
it
I
or
don't either.
anybody who tries to found something.
Hmm.
I even have some music I donated to his documentary in the Devil's Den by Carl Abramson. Um, I saw that he was doing a GoFundMe to make this documentary, and I reached out to him. I said, "Hey, I don't have a lot of money, but here's some music. You can use this in the." And like, he wrote me back, and he said, "Hold it, thank you." So it's in the movie. You can see my normie name in the credits.
That's
Um,
funny.
but so like, there's my cred. I'm not dogging the Church of Satan. Like, I think it's
Yeah.
a
No, I wouldn't be where I am if it weren't for people like him and organizations like the Temple of Satan. Um, yeah, it's not my intention to like throw smoke at anybody for sure.
yeah,
But I'm trying to approach it from a realistic standpoint of what my and the people around me's actual experiences were with it. And in truth, most people used the Bible more as a badge than for breaking down, blockages within their being. And I think that is what I was trying to point out was that it
yeah,
it just became more of a sensational, shallow thing. And I don't think it was ever meant to be that. But I don't know.
yeah. But there's also um, maybe you could help fill in some gaps here. There seems to be a thread that our occult knowledge is following. Like we'll start back in the Middle Ages, so we don't have to go all the way back. But you get
Mhm.
John Dee, and then you get this Isaac Newton thing, and then you get like Aleister Crowley and Helena Blavatsky, and then it keeps going higher. You get Golden Dawn, and then Thelema, and then it hits the church, and then like that would be like 1930s, 1940s.
Mhm.
Everything, to my perspective, seems to have vanished. Like there was this chasm, and
Yeah.
then out of that became like Church of Satan, and then we ended up with like chaos magic from
Yeah.
like
And
in the
that makes total
70s. It like
sense.
it restarted this
Mhm.
whole, and that's where I'm at now. Is I'm trying to see like looking at the occult like a history lesson, but there's still the present day and there's still the future. So like,
Well, and the thing is, like, these things don't always evolve. Like sometimes they like split up. And so like if you had one order, it won't necessarily just either end or turn into something else. Like
huh,
sometimes it'll fragment, and then there's like two, and not just inner and outer order, like two orders with the same name teaching different things. And
uh-huh,
like that can invalidate, a lot of the teachings. And I know sometimes that happens, but I think what happened when that schism, that chasm, when that void opened up, I think a lot of the orders and covens went underground.
mm,
And because I mean, like if you don't go underground, you get another Crowley that just prints everything in the Equinox.
mm,
Um, so when everything goes underground, you're gonna have charlatans trying to fill the void, and that's going to make all magic look invalid to every degree, which is going to make
oh,
less people pursue it, which is going to make less orders pop up. But then you're going to have people that actually know that magic is real. And so they're going to keep seeking and they're going to keep looking for other people. And they're only going to be able to do that by pulling pieces of the puzzle from here to there. And I mean, right there, that's the birth of chaos magic. Taking a little bit
right,
here, taking a little bit there. And then you're going to have, as the pendulum swings, you're going to have the orders merging with chaos magic, which is going to cause another renaissance.
Ooh, I like that.
I mean, that's
Um,
just when I sort of think about it, that's what makes sense to me. But and when I reflect, I sort of see that happening too. So maybe that's what
that
happened. I don't know.
that's the way, like, at least from the information I can find or get exposed to, I feel like there's been some moments where a lot of traditions have like combined, and then
Mm.
they do this split thing, almost like a family tree, you know, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
there's another combination. And I feel like that chaos magic might be the most, at least my perspective, the most
Mhm.
recent hub of things to just be put back together again.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And I think it's important to do that. I think it's important to combine where we came from with where we're going for multiple reasons, not just so we don't lose track of things, but because we do get that explosive,
Mhm.
renaissance aspect that comes from that.
Yeah, what a concept.
So
It's
in
like,
your own, go
yeah,
ahead.
I was just, I was just picturing like occult, the magic is real portion of that occult family tree, like wherever it began. It's
Yeah,
been, it's like a Merovingian line, you know, the people who are related to Christ, right? And
that's interesting.
it's
Yeah.
still going. And so in some way, there probably is a tradition that is a direct, like, father to son, father to son, father to son
Right.
lineage all the way back. There probably is. Maybe it's just one person at this point, but there's,
It could very well be.
it could be shaped like that, or it's some unnatural force we don't understand that keeps pushing it all back together. Like Golden Dawn did, it kind of like puts this all together, and they made their own version of a lot of things that, whatever, it's mostly
Mhm.
good. Their Nokian sucks.
So yeah.
That's like a
Well,
bummer, you know.
that's a
I really
concept in
like Golden
itself.
Dawn,
Yeah. I
except for that part. I'm like, they dropped the ball there. They kind of dropped the ball there,
on the
I think.
Enochian.
Yeah, I think they
So what makes you feel that way?
um because I approach things with a lot of research. And so I, for most would agree that John Dee and his that's where the Enochian thing came from. He was summoning angels and scrying mirror, and like, and it kind of started there. But he didn't actually he didn't flesh out a system, but he fleshed out some of the characters, some of the calls, the idea of using a watchtower type of thing.
Hmm.
But the version that the Golden Dawn uses, and even some degree Crowley, it's their interpretation of the John Dee system. And I just, maybe I just need to have more of an open mind, but I want to do the John Dee system. And the people who have tried to do it, um, they
Well,
can't crack it. It's just so complicated.
there's always the possibility that, and I'm opening a lot of pages with this one line of thought, but there's always the concept that John Dee used real math and made a real system, but Edward Kelly was a charlatan.
Oh, yeah,
And then there's
demonstratively.
also, huh?
Yeah, demonstratively a charlatan. Yeah,
Sure.
con man.
And then there's the possibility that maybe the Golden Dawn adepts were just better magicians than Edward Kelly
Oh,
and John Dee. There's so many variables. And
interesting.
every single person that I speak to, I've only spoken to maybe a handful of people in my 20 years of research that have actually experimented with Enochian. Um, and every single one of them has had different experiences, but there seems to be some similar thread running through about something between extra supraterrestrial intelligence and or synthetic artificial intelligence, if not an amalgam of the two.
Huh.
And I wonder how much of it was picked up on that wasn't meant to be. Like we crossed frequencies with a walkie-talkie and overheard some things. And I don't know. I'm just getting into
I
but yeah.
mind you,
And
I haven't deep dove into a system yet. And the reason is because I want to, if when it's time for me to do Enochian, I want to get into a system that I'm okay with, because I don't want to get into a system and then one day discover, oh, this was made by some hippie that, oh damn, I'm following, because I always like to, um,
well,
which makes Enochian not a tough sell for me because I believe in it, but the system, it's I feel like it's so system, like it seems like a system.
that's
And what
yeah,
I mean is, so you shouldn't be able to just willy-nilly make your own version of it because it's a
yeah.
system. And that's where I'm stuck on. Once I'm sold on a version of it, I'll dive in.
Maybe it's something like every apple seed looks alike, but every apple tree looks different. I don't know.
Hmm.
I what I have done with Enochian, this has been my formula from the beginning. I think about how I feel about it on my own.
Uh-huh.
And then I go and get the most relevant research that I can on the subject, and I read it all, and then I read it all again. And then I pull out, I'm very much a chaos magician, I guess. I pull out all of the things that seem to overlap with each other, and then I pull them through my own filter of experience and opinion. And then that's what I work with. And then after I do that, I go back and I compare the results with other people, or, what the books were trying to teach me. And when I did it that way, I didn't so much feel like I was making my own system as much as I was linking it to my own motherboard, so that what came through the monitor was something that I could actually understand.
Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah. I
But I don't
feel
know if that was the correct approach or not. There's always in the back of my mind this idea that I'm not supposed to do things the way that I want to. And
huh.
then in the back of my mind, the other half of me is saying, yes, you're always supposed to do things your way, your personal way. So I sort of do both.
It's it seems to point to both of our individual psychological paths, like
Sure.
I was raised to like need all the information and data before I take one step, right?
Uh-huh.
And so like I have my books there. I got Crowley's Enochian system book and one, and I looked through it and I was just like, okay, I can understand the system, but there's no sources. Like he's not,
Right.
there's no source. Like, okay, so if this is just Crowley's system, I'm in, but spell that out. Say this is
Yeah.
Crowley's system, not this is Enochian, because it's
Mhm.
see what does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And I
It's,
also agree. And I
yeah.
think we fall into a lot of trouble when we try to become these spiritual masters that just received the voice of God one day and wrote it all down. And well, now you have to listen. It's like nothing happens that way. Nothing has ever happened that way and probably will never happen that way. Everything always comes from somewhere else. I mean, even
Yeah.
even if someone were to be born a Buddha and they just had this incredibly enlightened consciousness, like they would even express some sources of where they were getting this information.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand the hesitation, and I think I also like I commend it. I think we should be somewhat hesitant on this path because there are so many pitfalls.
Yes. And um, I think with any ritual, even something basic as the lesser pentagram, banishing, just a lesser pentagram ritual, I think it's good to learn its pure base structure first, because the version I do is wildly different than the books, but I've been doing it for a long time. So
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like now that I grasp what's happening, and same for you with other things, we can modify it into more of our own version of the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. But
Right.
You really need like that initial roadmap to,
I think so. Well, and I think that's one of the strengths. I think that might be the strength and the weakness of the whole lodge order coven system is we never know where someone else is on the path. So
mm,
that's one of the purposes of initiation, in my experience, is you have to start them somewhere. And you never know when you're initiating someone or when you're being initiated what your level is comparatively, relatively to the other people. So we have to give general teachings and general symbols, which will
yes,
only link up with the unconscious and the divine so much. Um, so yeah, I think that's one of the strengths and weaknesses of the lodge system is like that very general basic teaching. But I do think that we're meant to transcend that on a personal level at some point.
I think
Because to
so.
me, the whole meaning of life is perspective. That the
I
whole
think so
meaning of,
too. Yeah.
yeah, it seems to be something like perception or perspective. Because otherwise, why am I here and you are there?
Yeah, this circles all the way back to the beginning, that left and right oscillation, right? You
Yeah.
got one side that is like, no, you must pronounce these atum and ehae. You must pronounce them each with 4 syllables, exactly, very strict, right? You have to do
Uh-huh.
it perfect. And then you have the other side is like, I don't want to use Hebrew words. And you can do
Right.
it that way. But
Mhm.
I really feel that if you're gonna make your own system, you really gotta at least wind that snake up that tree first.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and I feel I've done that with that. Let's just use the lesser ritual, the
Mhm.
banishing pentagram ritual. I just like calling it LBRP. I'm trying to help people
Yes. Yeah.
listening. Um, but my version of it now is so different. I have different visualizations. I use the same words, but when I'm drawing my pentagrams, it depends on what I'm going for. So sometimes I'll only banish one of the elements, but I'll invoke the other ones. And in each
Mhm.
quadrant, I'm not drawing the same pentagram anymore. I kind of,
And even that is somewhat not corrupted, but different from the original way.
yes. Yeah, but it's because I learned that original way, I feel comfortable knowing that um, I'm not creating something that I am not ready to experience. Like what if I never knew banishing existed and I just been invoking stuff, you know? And every day I go outside, my tires are flat and trees are falling down. And, so you have to go back and forth, that left and right or up and
Yeah.
down. You have to banish and invoke. But it took me a while to really grasp that larger, what am I really doing here with this, that base version a lot of us are taught.
Yeah, you gotta know all the rules before you can break any of them. It's how it's
Yeah,
often said in art. And I think that's very true. And that's why I always preach about the basics and foundation
yeah,
and going back and analyzing what we've done. Because so much, and people look at the fundamentals as too basic. But
yeah.
when you come into an understanding of what the fundamentals actually are, you realize that they're the most important part of the practice. They are also the strongest part of the practice.
Yes, for telling you, I would love to share more about it, but we all have our own thing going on in our head when we do an LBRP, and like,
Right.
and I do it nearly every single day, unless I'm just dead tired, and I don't want to do a ritual if I'm dead tired.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there, just every little portion of it, you can experience different every single time, and it's in your mind how you're experiencing it, and it's you can't really write this stuff down because it would be a 500-page book of visualize the angel far away from you getting closer, and then you feel them getting warmer as they get closer, and then they blast through to the other side, and then you go to the other side and it comes at you from the other side. Like that's just, and instead of just saying before me Raphael, boom,
Right.
before, it's
Yeah.
there's a lot just in that before me Raphael. You could sit there for 10 minutes on that part
Oh yeah.
if you
I
wanted
have.
to.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know
and there's also like what I was gonna say something. Oh, one thing that I had to start doing because of that was I had to start making bullet point journaling, because my journalings were turning into 12, 14 pages. And I just did not have the time to do that, but I also didn't want
Right.
to lose my research. So first I started with bullet points, and that was huge for me, just doing bullet points. And then I started using a voice recorder because I can talk way faster than I can write. And
Yeah.
then I decided I'm going to start a video journal. And then that's what that's basically where the channel came from. Was
Oh,
it was a
interesting.
it was a private video journal. And then I decided one day to look up the things that I was recording, and I found that nobody was really sharing the things that I was recording. So I decided to just open all my videos from private and just release them. So
You're
that's
you're a you're a secret gem on here, man. I don't want to say a hidden gem, but like for people, I think for people who land on your channel, they're gonna stay because um you those of us who are practicing and researching, we can see the authenticity. You're one of the most authentic people out there doing what you're doing. It's um you're not doing a occult unboxing, like look at these new wands I just got, and this so and so sent me these crystals. It's like your stuff is legit. It's your practice, your research. um I appreciate the simplicity of the video itself. That's what I appreciate about content creators is just turn on the camera, man. You don't need an intro of you walking down, and then that's nice, but like I already like your channel. I don't need to be impressed every time. And um, you did a video on astral projection. Again, synchronicity is another thing I have bookmarked to like research and dive deeper. And someone left a comment on there. I don't remember their name, but they were just like, this is the most like the best breakdown of this system I've ever heard. And it was literally just like what we're doing here. You were just, maybe it's a 16-minute long video, and you just went, this is what I do. And you could see from the comments, people's minds were blown because it was just laid out in a way that was like just brass tacks, you know, picture myself going into this, or it going, layering, use like this layering of a tarp over something type of a
Yep.
veil. And like, how many books would you have to read to just hear that? Like, that's what your gift is like you're hitting people with, you know, it's real. Like you can go here and you just have to meditate and go up or down. Now, here's what you do. Boom. You know, I think you
I
implied
appreciate
something.
that. I
Yeah, I
appreciate
think
that a great deal, man. Thank you very much.
no, it's people can go look at the comment. It's there, probably still there. I read it and I was like, I have nothing to say. This guy nailed it. It's just like you watch it and you feel like I just got a master class in something that may take me years to figure out, if it's your first step.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
cool. It's really cool.
I very much appreciate that. That is, I have a list somewhere of things that I wanted for the channel. And the first thing on the list is authenticity. So I do very much appreciate that. And I will do what I can to always maintain that sense of authenticity, because I think it's important. So, like you said, like so many channels are like about the production value, or like about how much, like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not about the content. And I just, one, I've always wanted this to just be very grounded content, but two, it's
Mhm.
also something of a filtered process, because like someone who's super power hungry and not and ungrounded, they're not going to sit through a 13-minute video where I don't even talk about the thing until the end. And that's sort of by design, because I know a lot of
Ah,
this information can be harmful, not just to other people, but to the people learning it themselves. So I think that is another reason why I've sort of stuck with this sort of like grandpa format, as some people call it.
oh, it's brilliant, man. It's what is it?
I like it.
Dwayne here from Dry Creek Regular School. If you ever seen this guy, it's a cowboy with a camera, just dropping cowboy wisdom. And it's
That's awesome. That
his
sounds great.
approach to life from a cowboy's perspective. Hard work, wake up early, work hard, eat right, go to bed tired,
That's
very,
another thing that I
and
love
the
is
dude is just millions of views and sponsorships and like still no intro, still no music. Still
Uh-huh.
just a camera, him with a
He's
cigar
probably not
sitting on a
reading
chair.
from a script. Yeah.
No, no, it's great. It's great. Um, but that's what's cool. That like that AI YouTube thing, you cannot fake authenticity. You can't make me seem authentic, AI.
Yeah.
Write me an intro, but make it seem authentic. Like it doesn't know how to do that.
Mhm. Not yet anyway. That is
Well,
that's
they'll
another
train it
thing.
off you then.
Yeah. I do a lot of work with AI actually. People ask me how I feel, and we can get into that. But one thing that I wanted to mention is that is one of my favorite things to do is look at someone else that is relatively settled in their craft, whatever it
Uh-huh.
is. A farmhand, a cowboy, a blacksmith, a photographer. You will always find overlapping themes, and
Yes.
hearing an adept talk about their craft is so inspiring, almost no matter what the craft is. So I'll
Uh-huh.
have to check out that channel. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, him and there's a guy up in Norway, Bjorn Anderson Bull, Anders
Okay.
Bull, sorry. He's a writer, but I found him because he does bushcrafting some years ago. And he was he would literally take a GoPro, walk into the hills, start a fire without a lighter, and he would
Mhm.
just have flint, or he would just sit and light a campfire and he'd get it started and he'd be like, hey, how you guys doing? So I was walking up here today and like you just get sucked in because
You get a real slice of life. Yeah.
it's an authentic person that um, really knows his way around the outdoors.
Hmm.
He walks into the forest with a knife, no lighter, starts a
Hmm.
campfire. And where I live, you're not allowed to have campfires, so I kind of like just like watching the fire.
Yeah,
But but
man.
it's an authentic individual out in the forest dropping that his perspective of cowboy wisdom, but his is Viking wisdom in a way. He's
Yeah.
carving runes on a stick. It's so cool. But
And
he's
I
a
think
yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it's important for people to see that you can live life that way.
Yes.
Like you can
You
absolutely just have a garden and a library and just live your life and then talk about your experience. You
yeah.
really can just do that. You don't have to, but that is an option. So many people think that like the rat race is all that's left. It's like wake
Right.
up, turn on the news, instantly, you know, fall into a routine and plan that puts into trance. And then I was just talking about this the other day.
All right.
I feel like most people think they have to wind themselves up in the morning to spin fast enough to make it through the day, instead of taking their morning to clear things out of the way and make room for them to move within their life.
Man, that's a goal right there, you know,
Yeah.
because I have a 9 to 5, and the days that I wake up 3 or 4 hours before work, the day is just so much better because I'm like, you know what? I actually have time to pick this up and read it, because
Uh-huh. That's a great
I
one,
don't
by
have
the way.
to. Yeah, I had it on here because if we were going to talk about correspondence of letters and notes and stuff,
Yeah.
but what a great way to start your day with just your special interests and just take your time, not feeling like, I gotta get a shower, gotta make the coffee, gotta make the food, gotta get gas. Like
Yeah.
you're you gotta do what you gotta do. We all gotta survive. But if you can, what a
Yeah.
great way to start the day.
I agree. I am not myself. If I just wake up into my day, like I used to be a barista right after high school. I worked for Starbucks, and I would literally wake up and like basically throw on my uniform and then go to work and then
Uh-huh.
deal with customers for 8 hours, and then I would go home, and the rest of my day was attempting to negate all of the stress and confusion from the rest of my day. So I
Wow.
would just wind up back to neutral and then start the day over again. But then when I started meditating in the morning, I realized that you just look at the day differently. If I'm going to put it simply, it creates a different perspective of who you are and the world that you live in. Like you're not just a barista. Like you're this like ancient animal that has given birth to itself over and over and over and has the ability to fragment its consciousness into a billion sections. Like that's a totally different perspective.
I'm so glad I get to talk to people like you, man. Telling me, because I like, you did the 9 to 5 thing, and like,
Mhm.
and my job isn't, backbreaking, but I really do feel like I have to wait till the weekend to get my life. I really feel like, all right, if I want to plan some rituals or some music projects, I got to wait till these 2 days, and
Mhm.
I don't know if it happens to you, but it can make you grumpy because
Oh yeah.
you have your real life, and I'm over at my job, and I'm like, what I really should be doing right now is scripting out these color codes that I need for this video, but I got to earn a living. Grateful for that, but man, I think 5 days is my limit, and I just get really irritable because
That's
I need
understandable.
to be me, and I
Yeah.
need to create, and you
Yeah.
can't do that on a clock, really.
Yeah. Well, like you said, there's time in the morning, and I think every minute that we give ourselves like back to ourselves is a powerful thing.
Yeah, getting better with it, man. So it's like, that's why I got not the very end of the day, but after work, after that post work things you got to do, whatever chores are remaining, I hit that LBRP. And
Mhm.
some nights that will lead into the hexagram ritual and then a Libra Resh. Usually it's the Kepfra midnight type of portion of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but on the weekends, I can go deeper, and it's more, now I can do an actual ritual where I'm going to do some divination, or
Yeah.
I'm going to consecrate some things, or even automatic writing. And that goes back to my channel. My best ideas happen through me. They just,
Mhm.
I'm in the middle of that headspace, and you just go, oh, that's right. There's 12 of those too. Damn it. Right, here we
Yeah.
go. Down this new, um, but you really need that time to break some veils. Meditate is a very good general version for what I call it, because I feel it's meditation, even though you're going through the quarters and you're reciting, you know,
Yeah. It's
to
so
keep.
important to take alone time. Like, and another thing that I try to remind people is alone time isn't time spent busy in isolation.
Ah,
Alone time is time alone. It is time spent with yourself and no one or nothing else. So many people these days are like, I have alone time all the time. I'm like, no, you're distracted and isolated. That's not the same
mhm.
thing as giving yourself alone time. And I think that's very
Yes.
important.
Telling you.
So looking back on the last year since we did our last discussion, what do you think has been the biggest change that you've made?
Hmm. I
Just to put
think,
you on the spot.
yeah, I mean, that's a lot. Um, I think I'm just growing. I'm feeling like I'm experiencing this magic more. Like,
Hmm.
um, before the pandemic, I was very magical, and there was just everything just couldn't be the conditions just weren't right for a lot of things.
Mhm.
And I feel like not a rebirth or a resurrection, but like, um, there's nothing stopping my commitment or my interest, um, which is good because it keeps me less grumpy. But I have just been inhaling books and inhaling information and content, and like stuff that's been on the back burner. I finally can pull out this book and read this. I got, over the last year, something new would be, I got the Shams al Ma'arif, the Arabic grimoire.
Yeah,
Dude, it's pretty good. It's pretty damn good. And
that's on my list too. The Shams al Harif or whatever it is.
yeah, it's the son of knowledge, basically.
Is that
It's
what it is?
just,
Okay.
that's what it translates. Al Shams is the son. And
Hmm.
it's,
Oh, like
it's
Shamash. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, Al Shams. Um, man, going back to that, all these different places all around the world discover the same thing. They have a they have a 28 lunar cycle also. The 28 mansions of the moon, they have their own
Mhm.
version.
Mhm.
They have their own version of the zodiac with deacons based upon the letters of their alphabet. And it's just like they have their letters, their alphabet separated into four sections that repeat, and they're earth, water, air, and fire. And
Mhm.
and it's just like it's the same, not the exact same, but it's the same like four elements, 12 quadrants, 28
Mhm.
moon mansions, which would be more of like a Hindu, Chinese astrology type of thing. Vedic astrology sometimes it's called. But it's like these cultures were separated and
Oh
they
yeah.
couldn't communicate with each other. They didn't speak each other's language. And here they are with the same, oh no, our letters have numerical value. Our letters have connections to the zodiac sign, to specific decans in the zodiac.
Iconography, I like
It's so
imagery
cool.
meaning. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. Um, so like I I was struggling. I was really happy to find a translation I could read because I don't read Arabic, but I know the letters. Like it's
Mhm.
not an easy language to just learn.
Mhm.
But I saw this circle and it was broken up into like all the quadrants, but it had
Mhm.
all these words in Arabic and letters in Arabic, and I for the life of me could not find it translated anywhere. And I got the
Hmm.
book and there was all there.
Oh
And, and it was the name of their um I could best describe it as like that Poke Runyon master mandala,
yeah, I've
which
got one on my wall over
yeah, I know
here.
you got, but it's they have a version of that, but it's just the Arabic version.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
because we all live on Earth, it's the same planets, it's the same constellations, it's the
Yeah.
same moon, you know,
Hmm.
it's the same seasons, the same equinoxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
um, that was a high point for the last year. It was like finally getting a hold of that book.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I believe it's the only English translation is that I found. It's been in Spanish, uh, maybe Latin, but, but like and that just opens a whole other. I read about the
Hmm.
Gnostics and a lot of math books. I don't stop, man. I don't stop. I don't know. I know you don't either, but
Yeah, I like
this
to read
rabbit
a
hole.
lot. Well, and as they say in this craft, one book opens another. You don't ever just like tell someone, okay, this like so many times people are like, okay, well, like what book should I start with? Like that right there, it depends on the person. And no matter what book I suggest, like it's going to open another one. Like there's always going to be another book to read. And so I oftentimes have to close the book and open up my own mind because it can
Yeah.
be so easy for me who started all of this from a scholarly place. It can be so easy for me to just read, 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 forget to
Uh,
integrate what I'm reading, forget to turn it
yes.
into a philosophical formula of practice.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think the first like probably 20 or so books that I read, I didn't even I didn't even keep track of what I was learning. I didn't take any notes. I didn't put any of it into practice. I just kept reading, trying to find the perfect ritual and the perfect symbol
Right.
until I realized, wait, they're all perfect in their own way for different things.
Right. That's I was there too.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Because it
Yeah.
was because that's the worst thing when like you'll just be talking to someone and you'll be like, you know, you'll mention something you read and you'll be like, and they'll ask you a follow-up question and you'll be like, I just can't remember where it came
Mhm.
from. And that's
Yep.
it's not a bad feeling, but you feel like you're being put on the spot and you're just like, "Ah, I can't. And then 3 days later, like it was Eliphas Levi. I just couldn't think of the
Yeah.
name, you know? But
What
if
I've
you,
started doing now is as I'm reading a book, I have these like giant index cards, and as I'm reading the book, I will actually like take notes like on the index card of like I might read a 300-page book, but I might only learn four things in that book. But I
sure.
will write down those four things in the book and on the index card, and then I'll tuck it into the back of the book so that I basically have like a synopsis, like a summary of the work. But
Oh,
it
interesting.
also once I get done reading the book, I'm like, okay, these are things that I just learned. I need to make them practical. I need to create a philosophical formula to approach them with now. So I'm not just like, creating a sedimentary consciousness. It actually allows me to integrate the things and avoid cognitive dissonance or having to reread something over again and waste
I
time.
I think it's like it's old school, like
Yeah,
that's
I'm very
back
old
to the
school.
initiation process is you weren't given the whole book. You were
Right.
here's a few little crumbs, master
Snippets.
these. And I recently because the thing I had never memorized was the cube of space,
Okay.
and this was something last year. And so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna finally like lock this in. And so I spent a good week just whenever I was in a room, it's like you're inside of a cube
Exactly. Yeah.
and being able to orientate, okay, west, this is Jupiter, right? And move up here and boom, down is the moon and Mercury. And you kind of like, so when I'm walking to work, I'm facing a direction and I just picture my surroundings and I would go through this whole like, because there's colors for each side.
And
There's colors
letters.
for the corners and there's things there's a whole thing to it. And it's
Mhm.
um but once you lock it in, it's like when you first lock in the tree of life, you have it
Yeah.
and it doesn't leave. It's just there. And
Not
it's
only does it not leave, it accumulates like things. It begins to gather and collect, which is another
yes.
magical part of it all.
Yeah. And so it circles back to I finished the Liber Null Psychonaut this week, and they have that famous eight, the symbol,
Yeah.
right? I don't know
Hmm.
if it has a
The
name.
chaos. I think it's called the Chaos Star,
Could be.
something like that.
But
Yeah.
he goes through this thing like a point, a line, a triangle, a pentagram,
Yes.
right? And he's talking about first dimension, second dimension, third dimension, fourth dimension. And he's the drawings are um basically what he gets at is that eight-sided chaos symbol. A cube will have three lines, up, down, and like through, like an
Hmm.
XYZ axis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the chaos star has one more axis, which is a dimension. It's a dimensional axis. But if
Yes.
you look at that cube, because you can only imagine it in your mind, at the right angle, it's the chaos star.
Right.
And
Yes.
I was reading that and I was like, I had such a deeper appreciation for that because I had already been exposed to the cube of space
Yes.
and all the symbology. So now, now my poor mind has to imagine other dimensions of the cube of space, and I don't know if I'll live long enough for that one because that gets into the quantum experience thing, and it could
Oh yeah.
be, is it going to be a time? Is it going to be a place? This
Hmm.
kind of like, you know, other lifetime dimension type of thing, but it's that's just that truth of beauty and geometry. It's just, geometry is real. It
Yeah.
exists.
Yeah. I didn't appreciate geometry enough as a kid, I don't think. But maybe I didn't have the cube of space concept in place so that I could appreciate it. What do you think is what do you think's in store for the next year?
Well, I know it's coming up quick,
It
um,
is. That's one reason why I planned these when I did was because we're wrapping up the year and it's about time for another one.
don't hold me to it, but so far my channel, I don't appear on it anywhere. It's just music and trippy stuff to look at usually. In the captions, I'll put like, I'm starting to add more like narratives in the captions. So you have this psychedelic thing you're looking at that's whatever concept of the day I have, like a irrationally divided octave or something. But in the captions, I'm starting to put like almost like a miniature lecture.
Uh-huh.
So you have this choice to sit and trip out, or you can get sucked into the and I don't know if I want to do a Discord server or something to where I can actually talk or
Yeah.
share ideas without feeling like I have to produce this piece because it takes a lot of energy to produce music and video. and time. But sometimes I just want to have a place where I could easily explain the system I'm using to assign these notes to these colors. And I could just,
Hmm.
I have a website, but I really, I want to have something more than just music and video. And I want it
Yeah.
to be a vessel where people can make their own music and video and go, because it's the Google's a terrifying place for occult information, because you could say, what note is Pisces? And 80% of the sites will tell you it's a C, which it's not, And so you have to know, well, originally it came from literally the Golden Dawn decided that note. And then Paul Foster Case added the Hebrew letters to that note. And so, but to know to go down that path to find that accurate answer isn't very clear for someone just looking through like astrology of your birthday. I'm a note F. This is so cool.
Yeah.
Like, I want them to be able to know that um, here's the master source for that. This is the legit reason. And
Hmm.
it's I don't know, I feel like I just want to share things I've discovered along the way and maybe compress them. And the music to astrology and correspondence is something I have all dialed in spreadsheets and whatnot, but there's not
Hmm.
really a one authoritative source. You're digging through appendices and people's blog posts that are not always accurate, or they're not using the right colors. And not that I would be the authority, but unlike a Crowley book, there'll be a source and it'll link
Hmm.
right to Paul Foster Case's publication where he first lays it out. And he's like,
Hmm.
this is where this comes from, and this is why it's the way it is. Um, and no, if I would have had that at the beginning, that would have been helpful, because it took a long time.
Yeah.
You got to read the black brick, and then you got to read the middle pillar, because it's in here, it's in the back,
Yeah.
in a,
Hmm.
um, but like,
Yeah.
so that's just one example of like how long it took me to even explain what I would want to do in just one little section of it. It's getting a little time consuming, so it'd be nice to have it
Yeah.
like, here's where you go, here's the link, man, boom, this is where I'm getting it from, because I'm trying to put it in YouTube descriptions, and I know people don't really need read them, or um, it's hard to communicate ideas like this
Yeah.
succinctly.
A lot of times I'll have to say what I said in the description in a comment in a different way for people to
That's
get the idea of what I'm trying to say, or even to see it. But one thing I wanted to mention that would be cool about a Discord server for Ambient Esoterica is that it is also art, which means that there's interpretation available. And if you had a server, there would be the potential for other people to say, well, when I watched this video, this is the experience that I had. And for someone else to say, well, yeah, I'd had that experience as well.
interesting.
Or for people to say, I had this experience, well, I had this one. Well, why do we think that happened? It opens up potential for discussion, which I think is
Yes.
very important when we're doing things that are highly interpretive and highly abstract, opening
Yes.
up a conversation on them.
That um even more important than like knowing you're getting views or subscribers is those discussions when people they get into the nitty gritty. Happens with you, it happens with me, where people will check my math. They're being like, oh, so you're doing this, well, how did you get this number? I'll be like, it's because of this, and I'm dividing the octave by the square root of 1200, and they're like, so it's 35 point something notes per octave? I go, yes. And they're like, how do you play that? And then I explain how, but like, if this was in a Discord server, these questions could be real time. And
Yes.
um, there's something icky about social media, and that some people will withhold because they don't want you to get a view by them leaving a comment. It's this very strange,
Yeah.
I'm
Dynamic.
sensing,
Yeah.
yeah, not a competitive, but like, oh, if I leave a comment, then he'll get more traction, and then his channel will do better than mine. And I'm like, I
People
just
like that,
I don't
people
think
like
like
that,
that.
they will. And here's the thing. I want to say this right now because I've noticed that as well. And to all the people who genuinely feel that way, this is how the algorithm works. If those people are getting comments on their channel is connected to your channel by means of genre. The more people that are watching their channel, the more likely your channel is to be recommended to those people. So it you can approach it selfishly, knowing that. But at the same time, why are you doing this? Are you doing this to be a celebrity? Or are you doing it because the information is valuable and can help our evolution?
Exactly. And I don't know which video of yours, maybe many, you made that clear long ago with what your approach is. It's like, and I don't remember exactly what you said. Maybe you don't either, but
I don't.
you're like, I come in here to share information. I'm not worried about how many views it gets. I'm not here to collect subscribers. And that's still my philosophy. And even uh, some people have asked, like, hey, how many subscribers you have? And I go, I honestly don't know,
Yeah.
you know. And they'll be like, well, I have a channel, and so we'll just be kind of chatting, and I'll look at their thing. I'll be like, oh wow, you got, that's cool, man. And then I go, let me log in and see, because I'm generally, and I'll look, and it'll be like 10 times as many as they have. But
Yeah.
and they're like, holy crap, man. And I'm like, I genuinely don't look at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
I try to avoid
I
seeing that
generally,
number, in
occasionally
all
you get a
honesty.
pop-up, so you're notified. It'll be like new milestone, but like,
Yeah.
um, there is a way to get views, and I'm just not interested in that. It takes too much
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
It just
Well, and
takes.
there's a certain formula that generates views that prevents actual interaction from occurring. And
Ah,
I don't know if that's intentional. I don't want to start, getting into conspiracy, but there definitely seems to be something to that. I'll say that much.
yeah, I, I think my best strategy is using keywords smartly, to where if way back at the beginning of this conversation, I mentioned, like, if someone wants to know what is the sound of the winter solstice, hopefully my video will
Right.
show up. Or
Hmm.
making music with D&D dice, or just the sound of the Queen of Wands. And like, so I kind of embed that in a description and the title.
Hmm.
um, as my channel is called Ambient Esoterica, and it's like, you've been very kind in explaining that it's not just me sitting there with a bunch of reverb and like, woo,
Mm.
like, there's a lot behind it, an
I can tell.
awful lot beyond. There's an awful lot behind it, and sometimes this is a free tip for you budding YouTubers out there. Use a title that no one has ever used before. Don't say like Halloween 2024, because no one will see your video. But you have to say, something completely unique in your title. And if you scroll down my channel, the titles will look like the dumbest things to ever name a piece of music, to a
Right.
normal person. They're
I've
like, what?
encountered that as well. Yeah.
And I think, well, I'm doing that because I want, like, because I have one of the popular I'm looking at right now, the sounds of the Shemhamphoras angels, right?
Hmm.
And I've had a couple of videos now where I interpret the sound of the angels based upon Paul Foster Case's system. And that does good, because not because it's good. To me, it just sounds like whatever. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of videos about the angels, but there's very few that are like, what do they sound like?
Right.
So that's why I got
Well, and
sulfuric microtonality and like very strange words, but for the strange people who are using those words, they'll
yeah,
be like, hell yeah, this guy gets me. He's
they
way
have an
down in the
idea of
deep.
what to expect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's something else that I wanted to potentially like float your way conceptually, which is like the idea that people might be approaching your channel thinking that, like, oh, this is music. It's going to sound pleasant, or it's going to sound harmonious. But I think we've seen a lot of the times the audio that is generated isn't always pleasant or harmonious. And I think that that might be throwing some people off as well, but I don't think you should change anything in regard to that because it is what it is. That's what we're
I'm not
exploring.
confused. It doesn't sound that way to me, but I know what people are getting at because I've seen some comments where people are like, I'm scared to death to listen to this. Like, and they're partly joking, but they're like, ooh, this is the spookiest, crazy, like, and I get that perspective, but I don't think they're genuinely afraid to listen to the music,
Right. Yeah.
but it just comes out that way. Like
Yeah.
I'm not writing these compositions where like this is going to be a funeral dirge and it's going to be in
Right.
D flat minor. It's well, I mean, this is the planet that's in the sky at this time, and Pisces is the only sign of in the note B. It doesn't have a planet in it, so the only time you hear the note B is if you're talking about Pisces. But
Okay.
then other times, so anytime Pisces shows up, it causes a lot of clashing, because it's like
Look at its
this
symbol.
weird note. It's this weird note in your chord. And
Yeah.
was it the Shimhamfrosh one? I think as a partial joke in the Shimhamfrosh video, I actually named the chords like if you're going to write it out as a musician, and they were these long-winded like F sharp flat 5 add 9
Uh-huh.
no third, and there were these obnoxious, just to show like I know music theory, I really do. I used to teach music, but like as a composer, it's just 3 notes, and they're
Right.
they're not random. They're based on that correspondence table. But if you, as a musician, try to be like, I want to play a C sus2, but with an added flat 7, like nobody thinks that way. Not even jazz musicians think that way. It's just like we know the chords, but we don't. You shouldn't be composing with the intent to write the most obnoxiously long string of
Right.
characters. That's
And
just
that actually that seems to be a thing these days. And within the art community, I think that's a cancer. Doing things just to do them. Writing the fastest song just for it to be the fastest song. Or writing the like loudest piece of, like, to me, I think that is detrimental to the craft. But not that that's what you're doing. I'm just saying I have
right,
seen people do that, and it's just always like, ran out of ideas, eh?
right. Well, to me, and in my defense, I'll put that kind of information, like the name of the chords, in the closed
uh,
caption track. So it's not in the video.
like
Like,
obnoxious, yeah.
yeah, I think I did a video of the nakshatras, which is the nakshatra lords. Yeah, it's called that. In 9/4, because it's in 9/4 time, because there's 9 of them, right? And it's
Okay.
just there's 7 planets, and then Rahu and Ketu. These are moon nodes. So they have a
Okay.
9 heavenly body system.
Sure,
So
sure.
the timing of the track is a 9/4. So there's this beat in 9/4, which is
I
like
mean,
prog
there's
rock
there's
tool.
nine beats every 4 counts. Is that what that means?
Yeah, like most music is 4/4.
Right.
And then 9/4 would be used in a band like Rush or Tool or something. Has
Yeah,
that
I was gonna
really
say Tool. Yeah, yeah.
skippy type of
So it,
thing.
it relates to not polyrhythm, but syncopation.
Yes, in a way. It basically means that every bar has 9 beats, which is
Okay, yeah,
it's awkward. If you're walking down the street, your left foot is here, and then next measure, you're on your
yeah.
right foot. And
So
it's
maybe
a
it does
cool
relate to polyrhythm. Okay,
it is. There's different ways of splitting that fraction. Um,
okay.
but it's I just like I opened up my session. I'm like, I'm gonna do this in 9/4, and I just came up with a very simple beat in 9/4, and it's there. But the average person jumping into the channel would be like, wouldn't really even know that I chose 9/4 because of the Nishaktra Lords. But if you
Hmm.
watch the video, the caption track explains this whole thing. It shows
I
the
like that.
chords, and like there's this whole long-winded caption and discussion. But if you
Well,
just
I
wanted to
think
listen to the music, it sounds great, like lo-fi music too. Just cool lo-fi music that makes sense.
it's beneficial to add that narrative as long as it's not draining you. Making it to where it's taking more from you than it's giving to them.
it,
unless that's
some,
your thing.
sometimes it's getting to that point because um, uh, it's really hard to explain this stuff. You know, we're gonna have a short come catch up with each other video, and I'm spending like an hour trying to explain my ideas.
Oh, no, it's
It's
interesting to
like it's
me.
really tough to explain. And
Yeah,
so like I use Google Docs and I draft after draft and I run it through a grammar machine to make sure I'm somewhat making sense. Um,
right.
but it's I feel for the um I almost want to say like if there was a way to be like at the very beginning of a lot of my projects, just say hit pause, read the description,
Hmm,
read it, then now listen to it. And I can't tell people how to consume what I'm doing, but
sure.
I feel like the experience is so much broader if you, even for anybody's video, read the descriptions because there's always some nuggets in there,
Right.
um, especially this way off the wall stuff I'm doing. Like, I can tell who's commented and just listened, and they're like, "Bah, music, huh?" And I'm like, You didn't understand I was following what's called a knight's journey tour through a chessboard where the knight moves but never lands on the same spot. And
Yeah.
every black and white square was a different note. And that's what determined what notes you're hearing. Like you missed that whole part. You missed that
So
whole thing.
to me, I that is so remarkable. Like just that concept alone. I don't think people realize, maybe I'm delusional, but I will listen to things like that in a trance state just for the effect that it has on my consciousness. That
Yes.
is transformational to experience things like that. And
That's
it's
the
and I was just going to say, especially to that on that level or to that degree.
this is where that magical magic is real thing comes in. It's
Mm,
because that example of it's called the knight's path or knight's journey. It's such a weird like if you put it in Google, you'll see like all these mathematicians have been trying to crack this code forever. I credit this channel I follow called Number File. They talked about it, so that's how I
yeah,
heard of
I've
it.
heard that channel.
I didn't invent it, and so I was like, this is a mind-blowing concept where there's a lots of knight's journeys, but I think there's only one people have discovered where it hits every square and never repeats.
Right.
And there's a certain path this chess piece
Well,
follows.
and the
And
night
like
moves
I
in
was
such
like,
a
boom,
weird
there's
way
there's
anyway.
my boom, there's my concept.
Mhm.
And to go from that to okay, how am I going to turn each square into music? And how and the magic is real part is the geometry of a chessboard is a perfect square. It's like a magic square. I forget how many,
64
it's just
maybe? I don't know.
is it an
But it
eight
goes
by
to
eight?
H. Yeah, I think
So
it
you have
goes to H.
yeah, so it's an 8 by 8 magic square, which is the magic square for is it Venus? Venus or
Mercury?
Mercury?
Mhm.
And so there's a magic square that already exists. And
Yeah.
so I just pop that magic square on the chessboard. And now I have all these numbers that never repeat. And so when that knight chess piece landed, there's my number that would determine what note would play. And so the beauty of this magic is real geometry, as you mentioned, this meditation type of thing, is it
Mhm.
will form a perfectly complete harmonic circle where every note is played equally as amount of times, the same volume, the same length. So it's this wheel that is what this isn't music until it sets in and oh my God, it filled
Resolved.
every gap. It filled every
Yeah.
gap. And so I did that as a short and people did not appreciate it. They were like, it sounds stupid. So I
Well,
did
that's what
another
I
one.
mean. People approach music expecting harmony and resolve, but it
Uh,
isn't always there.
no, it's 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 not. And our Western ears have a 12 note octave. So anything
Mhm.
that breaks that sounds odd to us. That's why Tibetan music sounds strange to our ear, or Indian sitar music sounds weird to us
I love it.
in a Western music way. And When I was younger, it sounded weird too. I couldn't understand why it sounds so weird and
And why it
nasally
made
and
you feel the way it made you feel.
yeah. But now I get it. They have more
Uh-huh.
notes in their octave, and they
Yeah.
have different spaces between notes. And
Yeah.
as they get closer to the high notes, there's more notes towards those high notes, and that's that weird.
Yes.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Like
Yeah.
they're micro. It's called microtones in the Western
Microtones.
world,
Yeah.
but
Uh-huh.
and
Have you ever played a
so
microtonal guitar before?
no, but I've seen them.
It messes with you so much.
I've seen one that has one in what's called seven-ito. So there's seven notes per octave.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like it sounds awful until you get used to it's still mathematically perfect. And you
Yes.
just and you're like, but it's still mathematic. And as our Western ears adjust, but mine have probably overcorrected to where I can hear a trash truck rolling down a hill and be like, that's beautiful. You know, but like but like it's just math. And in the Western
Uh-huh.
world, our notes are this far apart. In the Indian world, they're even closer. And in the Japanese world, they're even wider. They have the koto with only five notes an
Yeah.
octave.
Yep.
It's it's something to like expose yourself to. And then so I see those comments, music, huh?
Mhm. Yeah. As long as you're aware that
Mm.
those people don't understand what they are ingesting. Because
No.
I hate to see I hate to see people get discouraged. Not that you are, but as a musician, whenever people don't get the idea, or as an artist, when the idea doesn't translate, it's not always due to our translation of it. Sometimes people just don't know what they're ingesting, and that's very
Right.
common for Americans to not know what they're ingesting.
Yep. Well,
So,
back to your inspiration thing. When I see a comment like that, I take every comment as, unless it's just completely trolly, but like there's probably some validity in that I didn't make it sound very musical because it was more like a nuts and boltsy thing. And
mhm.
so the result of that one comment was I looked up because I don't know much about chess. I know how to play, but I Googled most famous chess game in the world. And I went to this chess site and it had every move for the game mapped out.
Mhm.
But since I had done that short that people made fun of, I already had all the notes. And so what I did is I made the sound of that game being played for each piece moving to the square. And if you know chess,
Sure.
it's like queen to black, red, whatever. There's names for every square, kind of like Battleship. And since the last piece didn't sound very musical, I said, well, I'm gonna go overboard then. So I added tons of reverb. Every time a piece was taken, I had a cymbal crash.
I
Every
love
every
that.
time I forget, like every time there was a checkmate, there was another kind of sound. But you would never know this listening to it.
That you're listening to a game of chess being played.
Yeah, I called it Kasparov's Immortal, which I guess is the name of the chess game. So
Okay.
it's 12 minutes long, and it's one of my better pieces of ambient music because it's just there's no way you could write this. You can't write this kind of music. It's that chess game determined what the notes were, um, the pieces and the winner, and then the grid I created from the magic square of the 8 by 8 magic square determined the notes. So it's really like I still credit myself as the composer, but I'm more of like I don't want to call it creator because I didn't create it either,
Translator?
but it's the translator's a good, yeah,
Hmm.
it's produced and I think I write created and produced by Shawn
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
I don't want to I I'm trying to it's really hard to tell people these are my songs, but I didn't write them, but
Yeah.
I own them. It's a
Uh,
very strange thing to convey.
yeah. Well, that's the thing about music in general. I had a hand, I'll say, in creating an album one time with one of my musical projects. And every single time I would show it to someone, I felt compelled to tell them that I didn't feel like I was the one that wrote it. I was
Ah,
just the one that heard it and then had to translate what I was hearing and feeling into notes. Because, and what I'm trying to get at is like, are we ever writing any of our music? Is I guess
right.
what I'm getting at. Because all we're ever doing is from what I can tell is translating impulse and impression.
I um I it's a really tough thing to explain, but I believe you cannot hallucinate something you've never imagined before. Like if you're seeing a dragon in a tree out front when the wind's blowing, the dragon you're seeing is probably a dragon you've seen somewhere before in a cartoon or a movie.
Or an
Like,
amalgam of all the dragons. Yeah.
yeah, it will have elements of something you've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that does translate into what you're saying of you're creating the music and you're playing an interval between two notes or two chords at a certain speed,
Mm-hmm.
but you can never play something that has never been that you've never heard before. It's a very because I really feel this when I'm even just improvising, like it's really hard to play something that could never have possibly existed. Like your ears just be like, boom, oh, that's a nice sounding note. Well, that's the box of all the nice sounding notes.
Right. Yes, that's the
It,
pocket. Yeah.
yeah, so you're already um and I'm sure there's some deeper forms of meditation where if you can clear your mind enough, which is
Mm-hmm.
not, you don't always have time to do.
Yeah.
And then you pick up a guitar, and the first thing you do is you take all the knobs and you screw all the things out of tune to force yourself to not be able to intentionally play something.
Right.
Now you're creating something that you're not intending to, which is
But did a tree
which
make that sound silently while growing in Brazil at one point 10,000 years
right.
ago?
Right. There's validity in that, you know. It's there's a vibration, right? Like
Yeah.
every object has a vibration and every two objects have a combination vibration. So like
Yes.
you know, our brain waves. I have videos on all this stuff. The
Mm-hmm.
brainwave frequencies, theta and alpha and gamma, and they make notes vibrate at a certain speed.
Mm-hmm.
And um, it's really fascinating once you kind of crack that code of how to do this with your gear, because
Yeah.
you do have to do some scripting on your synthesizers to play in between the notes. Um, it's kind of like there's too many possibilities now because
Yeah.
I now have an octave with infinite notes that I can
Right.
create
Yeah.
with.
Well, and
In
art needs
theory,
limitation. Yeah.
yeah, in theory, like so that um it's really fun because you're like, let's throw this code into the synthesizer and it'll be some
Mm-hmm.
number that means something to me. But when I look at my keyboard and I press like A minor seven, it doesn't sound like an A minor seven because I've retuned all the
Yeah.
keys. And so as I'm kind of like making this piece of music, there's no way my brain can be that good to know what it's going to sound like. And so
Never
you're
know, but I see what
really,
you mean.
you know what I mean? It's kind of
Mhm.
like you're given the notes you're given, and it's almost like the very first time you pick up a guitar again, because you don't really know what you're doing and you're
Yeah. Yeah.
creating something. And
There's
so
a
I
sense
try
of
to get,
unfamiliarity. Yeah.
yeah. And so like, um, to me, that's a beautiful place to be. And that's where a lot of the dissonance comes from is my fingers on these places on the keyboard sound pretty cool. But
Hmm.
it's not a chord you could play on a real piano or a
Hmm.
guitar. It would just be too, you'd have to tune every string for every bar. It's just
Yeah.
this whole microtonal universe, which yeah, it's good for meditation. Just lay there and check out
Yeah.
some of my tunes that are just a little spooky for some of you, but intelligently spooky.
Mhm. Yeah, there's intention behind them. It's not just a bunch of random chaos to try to, and that's what I mean. Like, you're not just making weird stuff to make weird stuff. You are making things that sometimes turn out to be weird because their nature is weird.
Mhm.
But sometimes you make things that are very beautiful or very complex or very curious. There's one that of course I put myself on the spotlight. I can't think of what it is now, but there's one that I had to listen to 3 times to even feel like I heard the whole thing once.
That's
Um,
good. It's
yeah.
design. I want people to be like, the first time you just like hit with this wall of like, what in God's name am I listening to? And
Yeah.
then if you read, then you read back, oh, there's actual pattern in that. There's some
Yeah,
kind of
and
pattern.
I appreciate the, like, most of your content that I see is on Instagram. Instagram likes to recommend your channel, like when I open up Instagram, and a
Huh.
lot of times I will catch myself reading the descriptions before I even realize what I'm reading. I don't know if it's the way that you format it, but like I'm like halfway through the sentence and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And then I realize what I'm reading. And then I watch it, I absorb it much more deeply because I've framed myself. You know what I mean.
I do. I do. It's weird because I probably should try Instagram more. Like I put up a short, like a clip usually of my longer videos. My most recent video is called Capricorn Scrying, Winter Solstice
Interesting.
2024. So it's based on the astrological chart for the exact moment of our coming winter solstice to the minute.
All
What
right.
degree all the planets are in, what signs they're in, this and that. And so the music just runs through this thing. It sounds fairly normal actually, because it's a 12-tone scale. But the video is just a crystal ball. And it's
Uh-huh.
kind of like I made a digital crystal ball that's glowing with all these different colors and clouds and like this and thing. And so when you watch the video, your screen is literally completely black with a crystal ball that you can just stare at.
Hmm.
And the colors, which this is part of like the intent
I
and
was
the
wondering.
creation behind it, the colors of like the blurry colors change and they're changing color and the clouds are moving. Every color is based on Paul Foster Case's coloring system. So when we go to what planet is in what sign, there's two colors of a
Aha.
gradient. And then, but I don't really say it. The
Yeah.
video, you just go, oh, it's green and blue. Oh, now it's red and orange. Wait, now it's red and red. And now
But at
it's
a certain,
indigo and yellow. And
yeah,
it's,
at a certain point along the path, you should already be wondering whether the things are corresponding or not, I feel like.
yeah. And so, um, I appreciate that you're trying to help clarify that it's not just random throwing noise or throwing
Yeah.
things through a psychedelic color machine. Like it's kind of like a very right-handed, no, these two colors are the only two colors that will be allowed when this chord rings. But
Mhm.
the payoff is, for me, it's so much more satisfying to know that like even the visuals I'm not creating. I'm just, here's the vessel. Um, what is it? The moon is in Virgo on that day.
Mhm.
Here's those two notes, which would be an A flat and an F at the same time. And the colors
Yeah.
would be green and blue, or like a blue, green, and a blue. Pretty close. And boom. Like, and all of that thinking goes into about a second and a half of music. Because then the next
Well,
note shows up,
yeah, it's so
right?
condensed and compressed. Yeah.
And so, and it just, uh, and to explain that in a YouTube description is really a challenge. It really is a challenge. So that Discord server thing,
Hmm.
I'm really thinking about it where it can be, hey, you can comment here and we can talk, and you don't have to worry about me just trying to get views because now
Hmm.
we're off that YouTube algorithm machine. Uh, you know, it's just such a weird that damn algorithm, man.
It is. Well, I don't think YouTube is what it is presenting itself to be. And I think that's part of the reason why the algorithm is as strange as it is. But I guess one more thing that I wanted to point out about your work and at least what it is helping me with is I don't know how else to express it other than like you can interact with an apple visually and you can interact with an apple with your nose, smelling it, and you can interact with an apple by tasting it. And then you interact with the apple on a nutritional level. And I think that is true for a lot of these energies as well, like Pisces. And I
Yeah,
think when you light a candle that is consecrated for Pisces, that is interacting with that force at a degree, at a level. And I think when you are hearing the frequency of it, it is akin to absorbing it on a different level. And I think that's one of perhaps the more subtle but also powerful things about what you're doing is it allows people to absorb these energies in more than one way. And it allows them to absorb it at a much more subliminal and unconscious level.
You know, that's what I was just trying to do for myself, you know?
Right. And I could, yeah, I could
It was
see
like, I want
myself.
to hear what this would sound like. And
Yeah.
in turn, um, you know, it's one thing to know your color scale. And like, I see your
Yeah.
candles in the back, right? I see two red
Mhm.
candles and a black candle.
Mhm.
Depending on which version of theory I'm using, that's two Mars candles and a Saturn candle, but it could be
Mhm.
something totally different in your own world.
Mhm.
But now that I've added pitch and sound to those,
Yes.
it's this it's this world that um, now I have to look at a green tree and not only think of Venus, I have to think of an F sharp. And it can be fucked up at times because
Well, that is not a normal process that humans run. Like that's, I
yeah,
think it's called gestalting. It's the act of, and this is part of the thing that being an initiate teaches, is it teaches us to experience multiple things at once, and that's not a normal thing for human brains to do. So it can be very strange.
exactly why when I'm in my 9 to 5 normie life, I can get grumpy if I don't get time to purge these things that I'm
Yeah.
experiencing. You know, I'm getting ideas. I'm walking to work and I'm seeing the sky is really blue and this whole Jupiter thing is expanding. And I'm like, okay, time to clock in, you
Yeah.
know.
Right. Yeah.
And clock in is when that creativity thing must clock out because I need to
Mhm.
communicate with humans at work. I can't
Yeah. You
just
got to
be
come down to earth.
I can't just be staring. I mean, I'm known to stare off into space a few times, that's for sure. But um, and I'm very selective of who I tell people, like, what are you looking at? And I'll be like, oh, I was looking at the flag blowing across the street, and it's, you know, Mars and Jupiter colors, and there's, you know, if I really wanted to do something like that, I could use those colors in a tuning with 50 notes per octave that no one has, right? And it would be something that's just totally unique and it could be and the order of the notes could be, I'm just, this is how, this is your real time
Yeah.
watching how the ideas form. And the
Yep.
order of the notes played will be the order that they became part of the union. Boom.
Mhm.
There's the sequence of the melody and it's do, 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 a 50 note long melody. And then if I wanted some rhythm to it, it'll be based upon how many years between each state became a union. So there
Right.
might be a lot right at the beginning, faster, and then it's kind of slows down. And like
Yeah.
I have the ability and the tools to execute that. You know, I could by the end of the day, I could have that finished musically. The video might take a little longer because that's like, it's not my specialty, but I'm making it work. That's
So
just an example.
how do you feel, and take or leave this suggestion as you will, but how do you feel about perhaps making like companion videos, which is like something perhaps like there's the video that is the song, and taking everything that you would have added to the description and just using your voice to explain it so that it wouldn't take as long to type out, and that way if people want to know like that's,
I've considered that early on, like
I don't know if
12
that would
videos
be the
in.
way to do it or not.
Well, I've thought about it 12 videos deep. I was like, I'm the easiest part for me is to make the music. The hardest part is to explain it.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know, I kind of just forgot about that concept.
Mhm.
And like I was saying, you were talking about what's coming up in the future. I thought a Discord server might be one way of doing that.
That, yeah. Oh,
Um,
that's true. Yeah, yeah.
but there's also some value in that would be a good purpose of shorts because I could link them to the, you know, there's, I don't know.
So many
I'm
options, like
trying,
you said.
I'm trying to, because right now I have like a pure thing where I could say like, well, if I'm promoting myself, why am I not in the videos? Right. So I have that. Anytime you make music, people think you're promoting or trying to make it. It's really frustrating. That's
Yeah.
that's my old world where it's like, I just want to be a musician. Not
Right.
trying to do anything. Like I did get signed and this stuff, but like that just happens if you do it long enough.
Yeah.
and you're not a disaster.
Yeah.
But this stuff, I really like the purity of this is just music and video, like ambient visions and ambient sounds.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I want to maybe a side channel, like a
That's not a bad idea.
and maybe the side channel would be where, hey, you can also join my Discord and we could talk real time. I don't care. I got it's fine. Much easier
Hmm.
to talk to someone on Discord than damn
Through
phone.
comments and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it removes it from the I'm just trying to generate views type of thinking.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about. Maybe it's because most people are consumers and not producers, but like it's hard to show someone your work without them thinking you're trying to convert them into a groupie that's now going to like tell every single person that they meet about your work. It's like, no,
Mm.
I'm just trying to share perspective. Like anytime I've ever sent an album to someone, it's because they expressed something that was resonant with that work. And I'm just
Ah,
trying to give them another piece of that perspective, I guess.
yeah, exactly. Like I don't know what you do in your real life, but very few people in my actual life know about ambient esoterica. Like
Right.
it's not a badge I wear everywhere I go. In an occult shop, occasionally I'll be like, "Oh, I make music based on correspondence, and it's really cool. You have this book," and they'll be like, "Oh, that's a cool concept, right?" But it's
Hmm.
I don't really like.
Like you're not wearing hoodies with ambient esoterica
I don't
right
have any
now.
merch, you know, not that I'm opposed to merch, but I don't have any merch. I don't have a business card to be like, I'm cool, you know, or because I had been in that band world where like you're in a band. Oh, that's the reason you're talking to me because you want, you know, you're trying to. It's so frustrating to like,
Uh-huh.
and so I'm almost like the anti or the and not the antichrist, but the anti musician now, where I'm like, I'm not writing the songs, my face isn't on it, I'm not
Yeah.
promoting it. I haven't put anything on Spotify. I'm not sure if I do want to do that. It's going to be
Mhm.
issues with that. But it's just
I have
I
yet to
feel
put my name on a project. I always just use the project's name.
yeah,
That's because I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about my experience or my perspective. Because there's something about like removing the ego from the work. Like
yes.
it allows them to experience it in their own way, I think.
It, and like as the creator, that feels good, you know,
Mhm.
and it doesn't translate for everyone because
Right.
you run into that when I was teaching music at this school. Some of the students were like, "You're like the most rock star ever," kind of because you know, I would forget in their mind, I should have more tattoos, I should have some piercings, and um,
Be
it
more
ended up not.
loud.
Yeah, and I'm a soft-spoken person who brain is more active than the mouth, kind of thing, and
Hmm.
there was some clashing, and it was like a couple of times that I would get. This is why I wasn't a good match for being a teacher because we would be like rehearsing a Van Halen song or something, and the kids weren't playing it right, and I'd have to pick up the guitar, and I'd be like, "No, I'm telling you, you have to tune it down to a D. Like, yeah, you're playing it right, but check this
Right.
out." And I pick up the guitar and I'll play "Running with the Devil," and the kids will just because I look like a nerd, but I'm shredding this Van Halen song, which I've been playing a long time, so it's not like to me, it's not the most complicated thing in the world,
Hmm.
you know, to play the basics of it. But like I could see in the kids be like, it's still not cool because you don't look right. And that's always kind of stuck with me is like, does it really matter that much? You know?
It shouldn't. Um, and that's the whole thing is like most of the magical adepts you're going to see, they don't look
Mhm.
like they've ever picked up a single grimoire. And so much of what people are being trained is like to trust your eyes. Like what you see is what you get. Like I don't know. It's there's so much behind the scenes, especially when it comes to magic. Like some of
Yes.
the best guitarists. Like, do you know who the band Yes is?
Yeah.
So Steve
Yes.
Howe is one of the best guitarists I've ever seen, but he's also one of the nerdiest looking dudes.
Of
Um,
course.
but it
All
takes
of
that.
Steely Dan. Yeah. All of
Yeah,
Steely
yeah.
Dan.
Yeah.
dorks,
Hmm.
just straight up.
What do you
I
do?
don't know, maybe we're just old fogies, you know. Remember the good old days when you had to know
Yeah.
how to play a piano.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's I resonate with that because there's a local metaphysical shop I go to, and it's real. It has herbs and all the stuff, anything you would ever need for any practice. But I go in kind of looking like I do, you know, and hey, can we help you today? And then I'll grab like something like this, you know.
Hmm.
Oh, well, I
I
got a
was I
green
actually
screen.
can't even see it. Yeah, this is the
And
lesser
then
key.
looking
Okay.
at me like, hey, have you read that before? I go, oh, I just needed a new copy of it, you know. And
Yeah.
they're just
Are you
like,
sure you know what you're doing?
yeah. And it's like, and so now that they've been there a while, and now they recognize me in some way,
Yeah.
but so I'm like recommending books to them now, and they know I'm like this inversion of like aesthetics where like
Yeah.
it's all in here. Like I'm
Hmm.
buying Lesser Key of Solomon books there. I'm buying what did I get recently that I just finished? Oh, Libra Null I got there. And the
Yeah.
guy was talking to me, hey man, that's a heavy book, man. This is some chaos. And he's like trying to tell me about it. And I was like, oh yeah. And then I was, you know, kindly dropping some like, oh yeah, you know, I studied Golden Dawns. And you could see like um some people are like, you don't look like you know what Enochian is, or
Yeah.
you're a Satanist, you know, kind of thing. It's
Yeah, I
fun.
mean
To me, it's kind of fun.
it is fun. And I mean it's the same with me too, because like I wear all black and like I've got my ears gauged and stuff, but like I'll sit here and talk to an old lady about Bible verses for an hour and a half.
Nice.
And I think there really is some power in being able to like shock and awe people that way, because it really does make an impression, you know.
Yeah.
But
It's fun. I mean, I try to find fun with it. One of my students, I was teaching him a Flock of Seagulls song on bass, and he was just like so bored with it because he just wanted to play the fastest he possibly could, and it's like
80s
dun dun
space.
dun 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 dun, dun,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so he's like, this is stupid. And then I saw his notebook, and he had a pentagram drawn on it. I go, dude, is that an actual pentagram, like the Leviathan
Or
sigil
is
on
it
his side? And I
rushed?
started
Yeah.
describing all the occult stuff behind the pentagram. And he's like, I can't believe you're even talking about this. How do you know what this is? Like, I was like, man, I own a satanic Bible. Like, I know a lot about this stuff. I know, you know, and he was just like, I don't know if it ruined Satanism for him. It might have,
That's hilarious, man.
but
And
he
I
was just
you
like,
always
you
yeah.
shouldn't know anything about this because you look like a normie.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I'm
you always
sorry.
gotta like blow people's minds like that. I think we do a real service when we do things like that, because it teaches people to look beyond the veil. It teaches people not to judge a book by its cover.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's yeah, that's such an
I think it's
important lesson.
natural, like you alluded to earlier, like when a younger person is new to Satanism, it's like, all right, time to wear my flag, right? Right. But like you can give people a little space, but then as time goes by, now you can have fun with it. You know, like
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm gonna look like the most conservative, like normie, like boring person who shops at Target, and
Yeah,
then go
exactly.
home and then draw some hexagrams and
Uh-huh. Actually create some occult masterpieces.
I did a few things for the Key of Solomon and those spirits and whatnot, and I think some of them are popular stuff, but like all the sigils on the screen and all these kind of it's really
Hmm.
fun. But it's like a little secret, top secret.
It is, and it's so fun because like we're kind of walking in the shadows when we do things like that. I try to make myself as middle path as possible, but the whole like wearing all black thing for me began just it helps my concentration. Like I'm an absolute airhead, or at least I have been, and I'm constantly like I'm kind of a space cadet, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So like wearing all black has helped me to focus and concentrate, as well as like I just have like 7 or 8 black hoodies, 7 or 8 black t-shirts, 7 or 8, so it's like I literally wear the exact same thing every day. And that has created a sense of consistency. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Groundhog's Day with Bill Murray,
Yeah, yeah.
but there when I started wearing the same things every day and doing the same things every day, I started gaining this level of intuition that I didn't previously had before. And then all of a sudden I started thinking about Groundhog Day and how he essentially became a god within that world because he could look into the future and he knew things that he shouldn't know. And I
Yeah.
often wonder, is there a sense of that, and that part of what that film is trying to teach, that consistency can give way to almost oracular capacity? I don't know.
There, you're right on it, because I think Steve Jobs spoke of that, and what's his name,
Interesting.
Mark Zuckerberg. They wear the
Interesting.
same thing every day. And
Einstein did too, now that I think about it.
when I go to my job, I literally wear the same thing every day. And our director jokes that Sean's our little Steve Jobs, because um, the reason that I do it is because I don't have to wake up in the morning and wonder what I'm going to wear. So I
Yeah.
have 5 or 6 of the same shirt I bought at
Mhm.
like Gap or some whatever. Just I
Mhm.
have to wear a collared shirt, but and then a bunch of black pants from Dickies, and like it's like
Mhm.
um, people at work, they definitely notice, because some days I have to break it and I have to wear something different, or I wear a flannel. And it's like, hey, you got to see Shawn today. He's not wearing his, he's not wearing that same shirt again. And I joke with people. I'm like, if I get a new one, I let them know. I go, I bought 5 of these. So if you see me
Yeah,
wearing,
yeah.
and it's for me, it's to keep my mind clear. And and
Mhm.
you were alluding to that with why you wear black. It's one less thing you got to focus on.
Yeah.
And I think a video you mentioned your headband. It
Mhm.
just keeps you. It's just I feel like I don't have to think about stuff. That's why I got a hat on today, because my hair is a little messy and I don't want to be thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, the other cool thing about the headband is I write inscriptions um that are meant for the day or the week, because this is just a bandana. So I actually have inscriptions, and I guess you could call them affirmations or NLP, or incantations that I put in
That's
here.
cool.
And so I'm sort of absorbing them that way as well. Or they can be protective, or they can be
That's
empowering,
like
or
the
whatever.
the Solomon ring, all the
Yeah, I guess it
inscriptions.
is.
What
I
a
guess it
trip.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
there's a
never heard
method
of
to my
anybody
madness.
doing that's that's cool. It's
It's
unique
useful.
too. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll put like stones or whatever, herbs in there too. It just
Huh.
depends on the day, really.
Nice.
But yeah,
Fascinating.
I I tend to be somewhat weird, but there's always a reason for it. I don't. That's what I was saying earlier. I never want to be weird just to be weird. You know what I mean? Like I think that
Uh-huh.
everything should be intentional. But yeah,
Yeah.
was there anything else that you wanted to reflect on or project into? I don't. I would talk all evening, but I'm gonna have to get some food at some point, and I'm sure you're gonna have things that you have to do as well.
Yeah, I
But
had
I
a
didn't
good
want to
time,
cut us
man.
off.
I had a
Okay.
good time. I had some notes. I was gonna we're gonna maybe some other time or some other video we could go on a rant about Zadi not being a star, because
That's definitely a topic of discussion.
we wouldn't be able
Um,
to get into it today. But here's a quickie for the all those Hebrew assignments and paths have
uh-huh.
notes, right, in the Sephiroth.
Hmm.
And Kenneth Grant's tree, the tunnels of Set,
Hmm.
they all follow the same assignments, except he follows Crowley's assignment for Path
With Dottie.
15.
Yeah.
And so from a musical perspective, the work I do, that 15th path is a C for the Emperor, but because
Right.
he switched it, it's A sharp or a B flat, same note. And I think so. It shows you that his system is really from that tradition we are talking about, that line of where these correspondences come from, but it's like an
Mhm.
update. So the top
Yes.
tree is not a perfect mirror on those paths, but
Right.
everything, all the other notes are a perfect mirror of the
Mhm.
Sephiroth path note assignments. And it's like,
Yeah.
those are the things that I want a Discord server for, are somewhere where, how would you find that on a Google search? You just can't.
With a lot of time and discernment.
Yeah, like since I had already memorized the paths of the Sephiroth tree, the
Right.
top tree, when I was reading through it and I got to that path, I was like, that should be a C. Why is it Why is he
Yeah.
write it as an A sharp? And then I realized, oh, he's using Zadi. It's like
Yeah.
not he for
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
Aries. So he has it
Mhm.
flipped. He's got Aries down there. And I was like,
Yeah. Hey, and
and so
Zadi.
it just instantly cracked the whole code. And so then I went and verified all the other paths. I'm like, it's the exact same except for that.
Mhm.
And there might even be a mistake, but that's
No, I
there's
think that
something
was
I'll
pretty
write about.
intentional. And I have a little joke. Anytime I hear people talking about how Zadi isn't the star, I always say, hey, because hey is the letter that replaces Zadi. So they think I'm telling them not to talk about it, but it's like, no, I just know what you're talking about.
Nice.
I
It's a good one.
it's interesting to me too. I don't even know if we should get into it, like you said. That's a whole conversation in and of
Well,
itself
and it,
about
if you ever want to generate some comments, just call your video like something to do
Zadi is
with
not the star.
Zodi actually is the star, and and they'll just
Yeah,
start a war.
create a gravitational pull.
I don't know. Or, maybe someday one of us will have some epiphany in some pyramid and we'll be like, "Ah, you know what else? There's another one we got to change."
Yeah, yeah. Pei is not the tower. No, Pei is
Yeah.
certainly the tower.
My God, what a troll that would be. It was like, it was just a joke. And there's all these magical schools now.
Yeah, that are teaching that. Well, I guess I will go ahead and let you go. I thank you so much, Sean, for coming on and talking and sharing some of your artistic process with us, because that's not something that just anybody will share.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And I love talking about it. We all, it's my fun thing I do with my life and my brain.
Mhm.
It's really cool to talk about. I hope you keep going, man. I know, yeah. No hiatus.
Well, and that's one thing that we talked about before we went live was how I have this sort of formula of where I will just sort of put everything out on the table and make content, and then
Uh-huh.
just sort of like dive back into my cave for several months and keep digging until I get more, and then sort of put all that on the table. So it's if I ever go on hiatus, it's not because I've lost love for this art. It's not that I ran out of ideas. It's not that I don't care anymore. It's that I'm digging deeper
Yeah.
and I'm trying
Yeah.
to excavate more to bring out, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's good for you. It's so
Yeah.
good.
And
Your
then
content
also
is
I
on
want to
fire now. Everything I see from you is just like it's so compressed. You have that gift to really, really compress a large topic,
appreciate
astral
that because it doesn't
projection.
always feel that way. Sometimes I feel like I'm just ranting and raving uncontrollably.
Well, you don't have a disclaimer on your channel, but you're coming from it as a like you should already have some background information.
Yeah.
Boom, let's go for it.
Yeah, here it is. Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, I maybe we could do another thing that's less like interview-esque and more like actual like practice and pragmatic-esque. I don't know if that would be like writing music together, or if that would be like creating some sort of idea. I don't know, but I would definitely be interested in working with you in the future because I think we have a lot in common.
Thank you, man. I um that's the thing about the magical world is like everything you put in the universe or I put it out in the universe, I might 4 days from now, something you said 45 minutes ago will pop into my head and be like, you know what? I should probably and I've made so much content, but I know those ideas are not all mine. I've been scrolling YouTube or talking to you, and I think you might have asked what entities I worked with last time I was on, and
Mhm.
and it wasn't that long after I grabbed this to
Mhm.
refresh, and
Yeah.
I did a video about ROM
Hmm.
shortly after that, and I got this new reverb plugin, and I didn't realize the name of the reverb plugin was ROM. And these are the kind of things that like we're on the right path, man. We're on the right because
Yeah.
it's you can't intentionally make that happen. It just you're just along for the ride, and I think even the video, a tribute to Rom or something, I tell
Mhm.
that little story of like, and holy crap, it's the plugin. And I think the number of the demon had some significance too. And I'd have to read the description to remember what it was, but like,
Yeah, I remember us having that conversation.
Yeah, it's
That's
just
funny.
these little things spark, you know. So I don't want to say you shouldn't be careful, but you know, watched Ancient Aliens a few weeks ago and they mentioned Rasputin, and here I am with this book that's about
Yeah.
this thick on his entire life because that one micro segment mentioned Rasputin.
Mhm.
So I'm like, time to read all about Rasputin. And like,
Very, very
wasn't
interesting fellow.
wasn't my idea to read it. It was something on that TV just said the name.
Yeah, Georgios Tsoukalos was like Rasputin.
Exactly. Yeah. He's in my air conditioning vent. That's good.
Yeah.
You want with a flashlight in my
Yeah, doing Morse code through the vents.
so bad. Oh my God. That's funny.
Yeah,
Right
I
on,
haven't
man. I had
watched.
a great time.
Yeah, me too. It's always good talking to you, and it's always refreshing to talk to another artist, because it not only gives you another perspective, it like via their perspective, but it allows you to see your own work through another perspective as well, and I think that's incredibly beneficial. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
let's do this again in some way, shape, or form, and have a good rest of your weekend, I guess.
You too, my friend.
Yeah.
Have a
Take
nice one.
care and be well. See ya.